Good morning, everyone. Please take your seats. We are about to start our third Paedagogium conference. Thank you. Good morning, everyone here in Patriots Hall and also you online. Let me welcome you on the third Paedagogium conference that has become an important space for sharing best practices, your struggles, and also motivation. Last time I said I hoped that we had created a tradition. So I was thinking, what was more than a tradition? For this year, I hope we start a movement of motivation, because motivation works always better together, which is the topic of today's conference. We have chosen this topic because we all know that salary or your career's path is a very great source of motivation for you. But we tend to forget that your colleagues, your friends, your students are also the very important part of this process. And without them, even the most sophisticated system might fail. And this is what we'll be focusing on today. I will tell you more about the structure of the conference. As it is a tradition, you might know that we had our experts at the very beginning of the conference. Then we will have a panel discussion full of inspiration. And then in the afternoon, we will have parallel workshops. You can choose two of them. I hope that you already did. At the very beginning, we packed the motivation, the source of motivation, in those little red boxes. What are they? I will ask for opening speech, Milena Králíčková, rector of Charles University, and she will tell you more about what in the boxes is, and why you should feel that you want them. Please, Mr. Rector, join me on the stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Esteemed guests, it's my great pleasure to welcome you in the Patriotic Hall of Charles University again for our meeting of Paedagogium. I'm really proud and happy to say that the work that we have done together, and I'm looking at the faces of many friends and colleagues who are part of this movement at Charles University, but also I can say who are taking part of this movement in Czech Republic. The work was very important and fruitful. During the last 3-4 years, we intensified work which was done already before. I know some of you for 12-15 years, and we were working together on increasing the pedagogical skills, raising the awareness of importance of pedagogical and didactic skills across all the faculties of Charles University, across all the universities and higher education institutions in Czech Republic. And during the last 3-4 years, we were not only raising awareness, we also became very well organized. We started to exchange the experiences on much more effective level than before. And we really, I think, changed the landscape. Charles University became leader, not only nationally, but also in a broader scale. If we look at our partners and universities in our region, not only nationally, but also regionally, internationally, in the V4 or Central European region. I'm extremely proud that we are developing pedagogical and didactic skills internationally, not only with the partners around us, but that we are also, I would say, really relevant partner in, for example, in our 4EU+ European University Alliance, where pedagogical skills are an important topic, where the partners that are paying attention to this topic are Sorbonne, Heidelberg, University of Copenhagen, University of Geneva, Paris Panthéon-Assas, University of Warsaw, Milano University. So the partners that are paying attention to this topic, working together in the European University Alliance, are really the best league of European universities, and we are paying the attention to this topic, developing it together, and that's important. even though it's the end of my mission as the rector, as most of you know, I will end up my rector's mission and duties in the end of January. I truly hope I will be here next autumn or December with you again, from the level of Faculty of Medicine, where I'm going to work starting February, but definitely as motivated as I'm here with you now. And I will tell you why. We are community. It's not important where we stand in the hierarchy. We are a community of people that care about pedagogical skills, that develop pedagogy and didactics of the university teachers. We are a community that will not stop to proceed in this. And I really want to thank you all for the last year, for your effort, for your energy, for your spirit that is really changing the landscape, not only at Charles University, but in Czech Republic, at all our academic partners, and also internationally. Now let's talk about the boxes. You see, I gave you small time to think and imagine what these things are. Well, I will explain why we started, why the team of Paedagogium thought about this. I would like to thank the team of Paedagogium, which is at the central level, that they are really thinking of you and thinking how to motivate. And there was an idea that we should award medals, silver or golden medals of Charles University, to those who really contributed significantly to development of pedagogical skills at Charles University. And as I said, it's not just work for Charles University. As I said, I really know that we are changing the Czech national landscape. So I would like to thank David Hurný and Bartek Wroblewski for preparing this thing where we will award 7 medals, 6 silver and 1 golden medal, to people who really made the change during last year. David, please come here and help me in the ceremony, and let's start and let's proceed. First, colleagues, thank you. First colleagues that will be awarded are from Faculty of Pedagogy, Faculty of Education, and please allow me to switch to Czech English mode. I would like to ask at first Karolina Dušinská from Faculty of Education to come here and be awarded by Silver Medal of Charles University.
Congratulations.
A second silver medal is going to be awarded to our colleague, also from Faculty of Education, Radka Háj, who also contributed significantly to the development of pedagogical and didactical skills at Charles University. Please come here to accept the honor. Next silver medal is going to the Faculty of Humanities, and it will be awarded to Associated Professor Tereza Pospíšilová from Faculty of Humanities of Charles University. Next silver medal is going to be awarded to Dr. Šárka Tomová from 2nd Faculty of Medicine in Motol. As you see, we develop pedagogical skills also at our Faculty of Medicine. So now an award, which is going to 1st Faculty of Medicine, to Dr. Martin Vejraška. Please come here to receive the award. Now allow me to invite here to receive the silver medal of Charles University to somebody very special to my heart. Professor Zbigněk Tonár is a person who really changed Faculty of Medicine in Pilsen in the best way you can imagine, not only in pedagogical skills. Last one but not least, 3rd Medical Faculty, Dr. Hanna Svobodová, and golden medal to her for all the results and successes that she brought to not only 3rd Medical Faculty but Charles University in the field of didactics and pedagogy of in higher education institutions. Well, 7 medals are already in the hands of those who contributed significantly to change that we together, all of us, our community, are actually performing. I'm in fact happy for them, but sorry for the fact that I couldn't award everybody who would deserve it. I look at the many faces that contribute, and I will be looking forward to next year, next Paedagogium conference, and I'm sure next awards to those who will move our community towards higher skills in pedagogy and didactics. Enjoy today, enjoy the conference, and I hope we'll keep in touch. We will work together, and we will move Charles University and change the landscape in pedagogical and didactic skills for better. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Sure. And also thanks to David Hurny, who was here with us on stage. Thank you so much. Last organization remarks. We try to fill this conversation with inspiration as much as we could, so you might notice the posters outside in the hall where the coffee break is. We will tell you more about it later, but please just think about them and look at them during the coffee break. They are filled with inspiration from project that was supported by Paedagogium. And now it's time to travel across borders because, as is the tradition says, we have our foreign guests at the very beginning of this conference. Please welcome Dr. Carrie Kephart from University of Maryland, Baltimore County, the USA. Welcome.
Dobrý den. Hello and good morning. I'm really excited to be here, and I thank you very much for inviting me to come. I'm Carrie Kephart. I'm from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. And I'm here today to talk to you about rekindling curiosity, motivating teaching transformation by fanning the flames of inquiry. And I'm going to put on my glasses because I realize I can't read my notes. Okay. So, you just heard me attempt to greet you in Czech. You will not hear me try to say anything more in Czech, unfortunately, because I can't. But I want to turn the tables on you briefly for a minute. Let's see, is this working? Advance. Advance. There we go. So, I'm going to ask you all to turn to somebody near you and see if you can figure out how to pronounce this little-known word in English. Just take a minute and see if you have an idea. Confer with somebody next to you if you're not sure. If you happen to be an English teacher, English linguistics, you might know, maybe, have seen this word before, maybe. Do I have any volunteers to try to pronounce this word? Don't be shy, please go, please try. Come on. Okay. Oh, dear. English speaker, yes, but not native English speaker, right? No. And actually, that is correct. Can you advance the slide, please? The question is, though, how on earth is that pronounced fish? And I'm not going to tell you yet, because I'm using this little I guess, wordplay as a way to pique your curiosity and get into the issue of curiosity and inquiry. And so I'm going to ask you to hold on to your wondering about how on earth that word could be pronounced fish. You can go ahead. I have quite a few. Okay, one more. And meanwhile, let's move on to talk about the fact that humans, when we're born, we're innately curious. Change again. And faculty members are professional inquirers. Curiosity is literally our job. Click again. So why is it that so many faculty compartmentalize? Research is about inquiry, teaching is not. So I'm again going to ask you for your thoughts about that. You can go ahead and advance to the next one. Why do faculty compartmentalize their inquiry from their teaching? Or many do, not everyone, but many do. Thoughts? We have shy audience. I know. Yeah, go ahead.
Just time.
Time is definitely one of the problems, yes. Other thoughts?
Well, we assume that people who research are different from those who teach.
That is a very common separation that we make in many universities. Other thoughts? Don't be shy.
Even the space, I think it's also the space, the way the physical space is organized.
Can you say a little more about that?
Shared offices versus individual cubicles.
Ah.
Location of faculty, there's different buildings. Those are some examples.
Yeah, thank you. That's one that I had not thought of. Can you go ahead and advance? So some of the reasons that I've thought of and that are come across in the literature are that teaching to some folks feels soft compared to disciplinary research, which is much more rigorous and hard. Time constraints were mentioned, competing demands, lack of training in pedagogical inquiry, and no reward structure in many places for teaching investigation. And last but not least, many people feel that teaching is just an art. Either you got it or you don't, right? It's not a science. It's not something rigorous that we can actually study. Go ahead. So, advance one more. I'm curious now to spend some few minutes thinking about theories behind pedagogical inquiry and where do we come from theoretically to talk about this. I apologize that I have many. Keep forward. Okay, there we go. One more. There we go. I'm going to focus on self-determination theory and motivation to start. I don't know how many are familiar with Ryan and Deasy's work back in the 1980s and then updated in the 2000s, but their theory of self-determination with regard to motivation for learning provides a comprehensive, empirically supported framework that focuses on internal motivation and psychological well-being. And it's valuable for explaining motivation to learn and to change because it identifies 3 innate universal psychological needs that when met, foster deeper engagement, persistence, and overall success. Next, click. First of these is autonomy, and that's the need to feel a sense of choice and personal control over one's actions and learning. And for faculty development or educational development, this translates into offering faculty, for example, a menu of professional development options, maybe choosing the topics that they want to focus on, the formats that they'd like to engage with, including things like peer observation or workshops, book clubs, online modules, that sort of thing, or even the kinds of pedagogical challenges that they'd like to address. The next need would be the need for competence, the need to feel capable and effective in mastering new skills and challenges. As learners in the domain of pedagogy, faculty can feel especially vulnerable, and they may revert to familiar practices if they're feeling less than competent. So educational developers are wise to focus on building trust and providing targeted, ongoing support toward mastery. Next one. And the third need that Ryan and Deasy outlined is the need to feel connected to others and experience a sense of belonging within a community. And I know that's one of the topics we're talking about today, colleagues will be mentioning. Teaching can be a very solitary activity. When you close your classroom doors, it's all up to you. And it's difficult sometimes to feel like there's a sense of community and shared purpose for fostering relatedness and reducing that kind of isolation. So faculty development that addresses, you can switch again, faculty development that addresses these innate psychological needs of autonomy, competence, and relatedness stands a good chance of sparking faculty's interests, sparking their intrinsic motivation and deeper engagement around developing teaching competencies. Next slide. Okay. I've got quite a few changes here too. So, igniting a learner's curiosity, that is their natural desire to explore and question and seek knowledge, helps to foster intrinsic motivation such that they are genuinely interested and engaged in a topic, which then drives the need to learn more and more deeply, to master skills and to integrate concepts and experiences. And all of this has the potential to result in sustainable transformation, that is personal growth and enduring behavioral change. So now I'd like to focus on bringing this together to focus on a specific form of pedagogical inquiry, that is the scholarship of teaching and learning, or SOTL. I pronounce it SOTL, some people say SOTL. But that is a very powerful way, I believe, of motivating faculty to approach their teaching from the same inquisitive stance that they use in their disciplinary research. So we can advance one more. Ernest Boyer, back in 1990, talked about bringing a scholarly lens, the curiosity, the inquiry, the rigor, to what happens in the classroom. And then more recently, Mary Huber and Sherwin Moriale talked about teaching as a form of inquiry into student learning. Next slide. And this one has a very long quote on it that I would like to ask someone who loves to read out loud to read for me, because I don't want to read it all. Do I have a volunteer, please? Go ahead. Thank you.
I will just bring you a mic, please, so that our friends online will know that too. Sorry. Thank you.
In scholarship and research, having a problem is at the heart of the investigative process. All creative and productive activity revolves around it. But in one's teaching, a problem is something you don't want to have. And if you have one, you probably want to fix it. Asking a colleague about a problem in his or her research is an invitation. Asking about a problem in one's teaching would probably seem like an accusation. Changing the status of the problem in teaching from remediation to ongoing investigation is what the movement for a scholarship of teaching is all about. Randy Bass, the scholarship of teaching, what's the problem? Invent your creative thinking about learning and teaching. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's Randy Bass at the Georgetown University was instrumental in advancing the scholarship of teaching and learning in U.S. universities, and really focusing on this issue of teaching problems and what constitutes a problem and how we think about that. So that'll be the next thing I want to talk about a little bit. If we adopt you can advance the slide, thanks. Inquiry, if we talk about inquiry as a stance toward teaching, oftentimes faculty come to educational developers with complaints about students. Things like students don't participate in the activities that I've planned. I'm trying to do active learning, but they won't participate. Our job as educational developers is then to translate that complaint problem into a question, something worthy of investigation, by helping them to reformulate as something like, why is it always the same 3 or 4 students? What's going on here? Why didn't the others participate? Another kind of complaint or a stance that, a complaint that I hear frequently is, I assign reading, but the students won't do it. Students don't do the reading. So why not just ask, why don't the students read, and what would motivate them to read? Next slide, please. In addition to thinking about reframing pedagogical complaints and things like that as problems, we also need to introduce many faculty to the fact that scholarship of teaching and learning or pedagogical inquiry is also a process, and it follows the same kinds of processes that we follow in doing any kind of disciplinary research as well. Data collection. We need to systematically capture thinking and experiences that are relevant to whatever the phenomenon is that we're studying. Data analysis, it's important to intentionally reflect on the data that we collect and what it means, and then make informed changes to the pedagogy or to the practice based on what we've analyzed. And last but not least, communicate the results, oftentimes among colleagues, but we want to push our faculty to communicate the results even beyond that, to publish them, to go to international conferences, national conferences, that sort of thing. Next slide, please. So now I want to focus on what it is that we can do as educational developers to rekindle this curiosity. How can we get faculty thinking in terms of their own teaching as worthy of scholarship and inquiry? Next slide, please. So I think the most fundamental thing at the beginning is to create trust. If faculty don't trust the educational developers, they're not likely to be ready to make those kinds of changes in their thinking and in practice. Some things we can do to help create trust are to recognize that faculty need psychological safety. They need to be able to feel like they can admit when they're feeling uncertain about things. They need to trust us that their inquiry is not going to be used for evaluation, that they can admit that they don't know something and they'd like to find out, and that it's okay to not know, and it won't be used for evaluation, but that they also have the permission to experiment and to fail. Sometimes the things that we try out don't work. And then last but not least, confidentiality in consultations. So I like to frame consultations as collaborative investigations between the faculty member and myself, oftentimes treating it like a coaching session, not about fixing problems, but rather working together to figure out what is the problem, what can we do to address it, how can we find out more about what we don't know. Next slide, please. So some coaching kinds of questions that work well in consultation are things like, when they bring you a complaint, well, what's going on here? What do we think this is? What's this a case of? Those kinds of questions, the first two I have there, are kind of a stepping back from the situation, removing some emotion from it, and thinking about it in terms of, what's going on here? How can we think about this? Other questions you might ask are, what would you need to know better or be able to see to understand this problem better? Pointing towards what kinds of data would you need to collect? What kinds of things can you find out about this phenomenon? And then, yeah, that's what I wanted to say about that. What kind of data could you collect? Next slide, please. So next, click. So another important move that we need to make is to validate teaching as legitimate scholarly work. One way to do that is by creating scholarly teaching communities of practice. Things like learning communities, teaching circles, book discussions are all things that we do ongoingly at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. Next. We also can connect faculty to the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning journals, to conferences, and to grant opportunities. Next, please. We can provide institutional incentives if we have the means to do that. We're lucky at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County to have some financial incentives that we can offer, some small grants, presentation opportunities on campus, and then working hard to get Scholarship of Teaching recognized in promotion and tenure. Next, please, thank you. And if all of that seems rather daunting and difficult, or if that's not the situation that you're in right now, simple things like just talking about teaching and inquiry in using research terms, talking about hypotheses and data collection and analyses, things like that. Those can all go a long way. Next, please. Wanted to share a little bit about how we're doing this at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. We have, a lot of ways that we're going about it, including building awareness and interest, structural support that we provide, practical and methodological support we provide, ways that we're trying to reduce barriers, and recognition and dissemination. So in terms of building awareness and interest, we have an ongoing Scholarship of Teaching and Learning discussion group at UMBC, and it's about trying to demystify the SOTL process. We do that by introducing faculty to the literature, and we read existing SOTL studies together and discuss them. We often will start a semester with a Scholarship of Teaching and Learning how-to book, and we'll go through it, chapter by chapter. We invite faculty who are doing SOTL to bring their projects either in progress or completed and share them in the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning discussion group. So those are just some of the ways that we work together. That group meets monthly throughout the academic year, and then oftentimes once in the summer as well. In the summer, that group is oftentimes about providing that structural support, the second one up there, where we will do workshopping around elements of SOTL practice, or perhaps a bigger sort of overview of what it means to do SOTL. But it's about giving faculty some time, especially during the summer when they can maybe take a little extra time, to actually engage in some processes, some planning and thinking through how they would approach a SOTL project. And if you come to my workshop this afternoon, I'm going to do some elements of that as my workshop. In terms of providing practical and methodological support, one of the ways that we've worked on that is to introduce faculty to the ethics committee work. We call it IRB at UMBC, but they need to submit a protocol to have it approved. So that's one thing that we've done. We also will partner in our office with faculty who are planning solo research, helping them to develop their research questions all the way to figuring out what kinds of methodological approaches they're going to use, so designing the study, even help with collecting data sometimes and analyzing, doing statistical analysis at times. So those are some of the many ways that we have worked with faculty. And then we have an annual teaching and learning symposium, much like this one, where faculty are invited to present posters of their work. So that's one of the many ways too. I mentioned in my abstract that I would share something about how we're using AI to scaffold pedagogical inquiry, but since we're running a little tight on time here, I have not much time left, I'm going to just suggest that you might want to take pictures of the QR codes there that lead to a couple of bots that I've created, or instructions to create the bots. It doesn't get you to the bot, but instructions to create bots to do. One is the cross-disciplinary solo research assistant, and the other is an AI-powered teaching reflection coach. So getting faculty to engage with the AI bot in a way that it gets them to progressively think deeper and deeper about their practice. So those are new to me, and I have not spent a lot of time with them yet, but I thought I'd share what I'm working on there. Work in progress. So as final takeaways, I want to suggest that when teaching becomes inquiry, change is intrinsically motivated, we hope. Faculty own their development. It's not coming from without, it's coming from within. Innovation then emerges from within. Teaching becomes intellectually rewarding in that sense. And there's a potential then for sustainable transformation. The goal isn't just better teachers, it's teacher inquirers who never stop learning, ongoing. And last but not least, I want to go back to fish. How is this possible? The GH is pronounced as in cough. You can hit the next one, please. GH as in cough, O as in women, and TI as in nation. But if there are any English linguists here, they would point out that phonotactically this would never work. You cannot have GH. It has to come after an OU or an AU, and TI never becomes at the end of a word, so that it doesn't actually work. But the idea was that English pronunciation and spelling don't match very well, which I imagine many of you have discovered. But with that, I want to thank you and invite questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Kerke Park. I just hope that I pronounced your name well. It's not just a trick as in this word.
No, you pronounced it perfectly.
You had a questions for our audience. Now is the time for our audience to have questions for you.
Exactly.
I will just bring you the mic.
Thank you. Jan Froniek. I'm an academic coach, so maybe that's why I like the idea of collaborative consultation. Mm-hmm. And my question on you would be, how does your University of Maryland actually support the pedagogical supporters in this role as their coach, as coaches? Is there any specific training for them, or how do you support these supporters? Thank you.
So I am the only person in my small office of 3 people who's trained in coaching, and I have I'm working toward International Coaching Federation certification. I've been through all the coursework, but I have not yet been certified. I did that on my own, frankly. The university did not ask me to do that, but the university has paid for my coursework, so yeah, I've gotten that kind of support. We have just one other professional academic developer on staff at the moment. Her focus is on assessment. At the moment, she hasn't shown an interest in training as a coach, but maybe she will when she sees the benefits, I hope.
Thank you.
Thank you too. I just want to emphasize that not only you in Patriots Hall, but also you online can ask questions. I have my connection with the world right here, so I'll read your question for you if you have one. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. You were talking about supporting the faculty members with the research. You meant like research in their disciplines or pedagogical research they're doing?
Yeah, we are a teaching and learning center that is called the Faculty Development Center. And it's been pointed out by several faculty recently that if we were a true faculty development center, we would support their disciplinary research as well. We do have an office of research on campus that offers some support for grant writing, and I know that they're interested. I don't believe there's much going on right now in terms of supporting the research writing. I know our president is interested in seeing that. It remains to be seen whether that will be coming to our office and whether they'll make us a full-blown faculty development center or whether they're going to change our name, which is what was planned a couple of years ago, to call us a teaching and learning center. That's our focus at the moment. So pedagogical research, not more broadly.
And we have time for one last question, if you have one.
Thank you. I'm from this institution, so we've got a lot of historical tradition. Your advantage, in our view, was that you started not so long ago, so you could more build on what will your teaching, learning look like. And you've got an extensive program you offer to your teachers. Taking all this into account, how many in percentage of teachers you actually cooperate with, join one of your events every year at least? Are you reaching?
Our reach, and this is not just for pedagogical research, it's for all of the programming we offer.
All your activities.
Our reach is about, I think, 35% annually and 85% over 3 years. So and that's rolling. I mean, it's roughly 85% of our faculty we touch coming to one of our programs sometime during a 3-year period.
And in terms of seniority, is it evenly distributed, or do you get more younger colleagues?
I would say yes, we do get more younger colleagues. We also have 2 tracks. We have a teaching track and a research track, and we see more of the teaching track than the research track. But we have a pretty good reach across all faculty, all disciplines. We're a university, and U.S. universities are all faculties together. So we have broad reach across the STEM fields as well as the humanities and social sciences.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your questions and your answers. Dr. Carrie Kephart from University of Maryland, Baltimore County, USA. Thank you so much. And we are moving to Scotland, which might be even trickier in terms of pronunciation than we had it in the US. Hopefully we are doing it right. Please welcome Rebecca Wilson from University of St Andrews from Scotland.
So, hi everyone, and thank you so much for inviting me to your beautiful university. We've already had so many great discussions, so I'm so excited about today and getting to continue them. For those who I've not had the pleasure of meeting yet, I'm Rebecca Wilson, and I'm the Head of Student Development at the University of St Andrews, so far more focused on working directly with students rather than those who are teaching them. And my focus is really skills, and especially the area that I research in is skills for the future. And so that's what I'll be speaking about today, and particularly thinking about how this links with motivation, and thinking about how we can use this skills approach to really think about how to support students in a very changing world, and thinking about how these problems interlink. So of course we're thinking about motivations in different ways today, but I think it's important to acknowledge them, particularly when we're thinking about students in the world that students are living in today, with greater digitalization, but also huge global problems. And we could spend weeks speaking about this, so this will just be an overview and a real chance to reflect upon this. And really I advocate for a skills-forward approach, and that means that of course that discipline-specific knowledge that students have gone to university for are so important, but I think if we open that picture up a bit wider, it can have a real powerful impact on motivation. But before I dig a little bit deeper, I'd like you to think about this question. I won't ask you to share your answer with anyone, but just think, what does the future look like? Maybe you've got images of kind of sci-fi films and robots. I was quite leading there because I have got some sort of robotic hand on the slides. But how does that make you feel? Maybe you're feeling very optimistic. Maybe there's a challenge that you're ready to take on. Maybe actually you're feeling very concerned and a bit distorted. I want you to hold on to that, but particularly think about how our students are feeling. And through the ranges of different ages and stages the students are at, what do you think they think their future looks like? And that's what I want to begin to unpick in the next 15 minutes or so. Firstly, thinking about how the world is changing and the impact this has on student motivation, especially focusing on the fourth industrial revolution that we're entering into now, and why I feel this is so important in terms of education, skills and motivation, but understanding this in a wider context about the global changes that are happening now and how students are increasingly preparing for an unknown world. That's a huge problem, and one of, or part of that solution that I want to think about is how this skills-forward approach can help students engage, really thinking about how that's holistic, interconnected, student-centered, and unsurprisingly, future-focused. So really we're thinking about the impact of education, motivation in this changing world on students. And so in order to understand how the world is changing in this fourth industrial revolution, I think it's useful to actually reflect and see what has happened. Now, this is quite a brief overview of the distant industrial revolutions with a mainly focus on Europe. But we're entering into a lot of what people are calling the fourth industrial revolution, or Industry 4.0. And this represents a significant transformation in technology, particularly how the virtual and the physical worlds are merging in ways that we have never seen before. And although this seems like it's just about technology or manufacturing, actually, I believe that has a huge impact on education and especially how we view skills. And you can see that if you actually look backwards. And so if we go through a whirlwind tour of the different industrial revolutions, we can go back to the 1800s, which is the first industrial revolution. We see big machine, mass power coming up front. And this has a big impact, firstly, in terms of migration, that we see people who were previously in rural areas migrate to cities. But also we see an impact on the education, because more formalised education comes about because literacy is greater value. In order to work in these factories, basic maths and literature is needed. And so schools are developed, of course they were around before them, but we see greater expansion of maths education, but really mirroring those industry factory settings, very disciplined, less critical thinking, less skills-based, really about the knowledge people will need in order to work in those factory jobs. A lot less impact in the higher education sector. Many universities, such as this beautiful one, my own institution at St Andrews, had already existed for hundreds of years at this point. And so those universities that were around really still focused on those classical studies. Again, simplification here, but we can see. Big changes then take place in the second industrial revolution. And here we see the use of electricity, meaning we have greater power lines, greater assembly lines, and huge changes are afoot. And, you know, Prague becomes a centre for engineering, lots of different kind of expertise arise. But again, this has a huge impact on our education. Our school system changed, there's much greater focus on STEM subjects and the beginning of kind of problem solving, although this is to a lot less extent. Much larger changes happen in the higher education sphere. We see the expansion and real focus on STEM subjects, but also the rise of the research university we're familiar with today, really thinking about applied knowledge, industrial partnerships, and again, much more focus on problem solving and real world issues in a way that wasn't seen as much before then. We can fast forward to the third industrial revolution that started in the 1970s, although didn't take place until after 1989 in a lot of Europe. And here we see digitalization of education, computers in classrooms and lecture theatres, as well as a much greater focus on problem solving and critical thinking throughout education, as well as a much more lean towards student-centred learning. Again, a heightened focus on STEM to reflect these changes, as well as the globalization of higher education with international partnerships and greater student mobility. So in this very quick tour, we can see actually when these industrial changes happen, it reflects the needs of society, and education often responds to that. So as we stand at the start of what many people are calling this fourth industrial revolution, I think it's important to reflect this and really think about how students are going to engage and be motivated during this real changing time. So the fourth industrial revolution began in the early 2020s and of course has already been hugely impacted by the pandemic. And what's interesting about the fourth industrial revolution is people are saying its kind of key feature is this virtual and physical worlds merging together. Really thinking about how this is going to impact our education system, thinking about more lifelong learning, upskilling, and a greater focus on skills in general. But we can unpack this a little bit more. And there's some key things that I think are important we can focus on when thinking about the fourth industrial revolution. And one of the biggest things, and I think in terms of student motivation and our own motivation as staff, this is one of the most important, is the rate of change. Now, of course, we live in a continually changing world. What our universities and education system was like at that start of the Industrial Revolution in the 1800s is completely different to what it is today. However, changes that may have taken place over 10 years previously are taking place over months now. And we'll have already seen this in technology, and of course this is a constant challenge in order to make sure that assessments and policies are in line with the new technology that students and staff have access to. What I think is more interesting is how this is changing our relationship with knowledge. And we can think about this in two ways. First of all, that knowledge is becoming more accessible but less reliable. Knowledge has become decentralized, something that before was, you'd physically have to go to a university library and access one of these books or that triple peer-reviewed journal article. That similar information can now be accessed to pretty much anyone who's got the internet, and even more so who's got access to a Gen AI. However, that information that their students and the wider population are accessing is not reliable the same way it was in that peer-reviewed article. And so we have this different relationship with information. It's not just about creating knowledge anymore, it's about being able to interpret it even more than we've seen before, the need to make meaning out of it, and also to really check that that information is correct and it isn't an AI hallucination. So this is one half of this change, the fact that information is more accessible but less reliable, but also the fact that it's changing at such a quick speed. We know that information, for lack of a better word, becomes out of date. Things that we knew 20 years ago, we know are different now. And again, the change, because of our relationship with technology, is going to keep speeding up and speeding up, meaning what a student might learn in their first year of the degree how relevant is that, or how much have they had to relearn by the time they graduate? And that's a very daunting prospect, both for us as educators, but also for our students. And so this leads into, this, again, focused on automation and integration, what that means to be a student in a very automated world, and how, as educators, this will change our classrooms. And I'm skeptical how much it will change. I think we'll still have this format where someone is sharing their knowledge and interacting. But we can already begin to see that with the use of augmented and virtual reality in schools. In medicine, this is already being used to simulate training and operations. And so it'll be interesting how this flows through. But then coming back to these human-centered skills. If AI and augmented reality can duplicate some knowledge, it can't do it all. And then what does that mean? What becomes most important? And I think the kind of these key human skills that can only be done by humans and are so important, such as this critical thinking, this analysis, this communication and creativity that we've already learned about, are going to become so much more important as we'll keep exploring. But I think it's important to note, and I won't go into too much of this, that this isn't taking place in isolation. There's other huge global changes taking place at the same time. We're already seeing the long-term impact of COVID-19, both on our education systems, but also on students' resilience. And this is the same time that we're seeing cost of living and mental health crisis across different university populations around the world. A recent study in the UK saw that 37% of students surveyed were so concerned about their finances that they were considering dropping out of university. And this again is at the same time of huge climate emergencies and social injustices that have an impact on how our students engage with knowledge and their feelings. A huge survey of over 10,000 students, all of which I should say were under the age of 24, 64% of them had severe climate anxiety. And you can see how that's going to engage in their motivations and their reflections on the future. So our students are preparing for the unknown. And yes, that has always been the case. Our students have always been preparing for a world that none of us have known what's going to be like. Again, my concern is here, and the challenge and the opportunity is that this change is happening at an unprecedented rate. That students are navigating multiple futures and really preparing for increasingly unknown. A recent study showed that less of half the students that were questioned felt their education experience hadn't sufficiently prepared them for their next stage in their career. However, and I think quite nice, that same survey also students really saw the importance of university as a stepping stone for personal identity and development. So they saw it not just about that next step, but really about who they wanted to be as a person. But they are entering into a world of increasingly limited opportunities and the real gig economy. And that's not just, I don't like this term, but unskilled or low-skilled jobs. Medicine, law, they're some of the biggest areas that are predicted to have changes. So really facing this digital disruption, but also digital vulnerability and reliance on technology and what that means, particularly to the most vulnerable in society. What does it mean if you can't access these same digital platforms that others can? And I think even taking a step back further, and it's really important to think about, especially when we're thinking about motivation, is agency and autonomy. What does it mean to study in a time of automation? And really allowing our students time to reflect, allow their time to be, intrinsic learners and have that identity as part of that. And without going into, a very Marxist theory, students, none of us do, want to be seen as simply a production of capital for employers or a statistic. And so how can we help students hold on to that? And so this leads me to my second part, thinking about this skills-forward approach. And a skills-forward approach is simply allowing room for skills in the university experience. And I think part of that is reflecting on what the university experience is. And a lot of this our students are doing, and as educators, we're already putting those skills into the curriculum. But it's about allowing students time to reflect on these and really acknowledging when they are developing them and giving them the opportunity to develop them. And I think this is so important for a few reasons. First of all, I've already said the changing nature of knowledge. We're all going to have to become lifelong learners. Students are going to have to keep readdressing knowledge, and also the fact that it's unreliable, or less reliable, I should say, depending on where students are getting information from, particularly in day-to-day life. They're going to need to be excellent critical thinkers, but also adaptive to this new knowledge. But then also the fact that there is more room in a skills approach to be active partners. We know so much, evidence shows that when students have ownership of their learning, when they can co-design and co-create educational experience, how empowered they feel and how great that is for their motivation. But it's so difficult to do, and it's time consuming when we're quite often quite time poor. And I think here, thinking about a skills approach, there's more room to do that in comparison to discipline-specific only approaches where there is content that needs to be learned and maybe there's less room for that. And also these wicked problems that we face in the world, things like climate change and social injustice. These need interdisciplinary approaches to be tackled, and the skills behind them are also important as well as these discipline knowledge. And I think I'm quite bad at this. I'll often say our students are navigating the future, and how can we help them navigate this? And of course they're navigating it, but they're also designing it. They're creating the future. These are our future leaders. And I think it's important for their autonomy, but also us to remember that and how they will be dealing with these wicked problems and the world at large. And so how do we do this? Well, part of it is acknowledging what students are already doing and really thinking about university experience as quite holistic and interconnected. And by this, I mean skills don't develop in a silo, but I think sometimes our students aren't the best at acknowledging how they're transferable. And by this, I mean we see a largest amount of numbers of students undertaking part-time paid work. Well, the skills they're developing working in that cafe on a Saturday, those key communication skills can be transferred into that presentation in their classroom. Or maybe they've got society work, or they have extracurricular activities, or even care responsibilities. Here they're developing those project management skills. Those same skills are used then to make sure assignments are complete. And this isn't about glamorizing that extra part-time work. I'm sure many students would work less hours or no hours given the opportunity. However, it's about acknowledging that this is part of their wider university experience and helping them capture that. And I think this really leads to increased motivation, particularly when we think about identity. The fact that by helping our students see this wider approach, that skills are important in their university journey. It's not just about what they're learning in classrooms and textbooks. It's about the skills they're developing along the way. Really helps with that identity. They, again, have room to shape this. Think about what skills are important to them, how they want to be change makers and how they can develop that. And it gives them more room to do this. And then by doing that, seeing that greater sense of the university experience, it can hopefully lead to a greater sense of belonging as well. That part-time work, that extracurricular activity isn't separate to their university experience, it's part of it. And that sense of belonging has a huge impact on motivation, which I know we're going to continue to talk about this afternoon. So what we do need to make sure, though, is that these skills that we're making room for, that we're acknowledging, because they're already taking place, are future-focused. And there are so many reports, the World Economic Forum, McKinsey, PwC, they produce these reports each year about what the most important skills for the future are. And again, we can be sceptical about how this fits in with a university setting, but there's some real prominent ones that I feel like we're already doing so well in the higher education sector. The first one is this critical thinking. That's embedded into pretty much every university degree. So how can we help our students really utilise that and see that it's not only about them analysing that reading, which of course is so important to that discipline-specific learning, but how they can take that out of the classroom. The same with problem solving. And of course, they're going to need to be adaptable, which is hard. Well, it's hard asking students to continually to be resilient, but then at the same time trying to prepare them for this changing world. And of course, creativity, which we've already spoken about, and I think is so important in not only the skills, but also in that sense of belonging and identity, that you get to be creative and really put your stamp on the world. So thank you so much for inviting me to speak today. I look forward to some questions. I always get my questions after the talk, so feel free to find me today, or I've put my contact details on there. And I should say I co-authored a book with my brilliant co-author Kat Wilson earlier this year, and we really help students think about this further, so that's the details, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Rebecca Wilson. And now we'll see if we have questions in our audience. Oh, I see the question over there.
Thank you for your presentation. I've got just one question.
Please introduce yourself briefly.
Oh, sorry. My name is Petr Baumann from the University of South Bohemia, Faculty of Science. The field of pedagogy. Well, my question would be, what would you say to a critique that would suggest that if you combine the trend which leads to unreliable information, as you said, together with the trend skills forward approach, what if this combination leads to producing skilled ignorance?
Yeah, it's a really important question. And to me, I think it's the fact that they're you need to look at them together. And there's, of course, so much very reliable information out there. And so I think what's so important is, trying to produce awareness of what is reliable, unreliable, and when we should question, and maybe something was reliable at the time and it's not. So I think I don't have a simple answer for that, but I guess large of it would just be an awareness that could be a problem, and keeping it on the radar, if that's kind of one way of looking at it.
Thank you. I see the other questions here.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Very provocative.
Please stand up and introduce yourself so that we know who's
Hi there.
talking.
My name is Steve. I'll be presenting this afternoon on something totally unrelated, but I'm based at Dublin City University, where we have a futures program that has kind of identified 17 transversal skills that we're trying to embed across all programs and make connections throughout the curriculum. And it's very, very kind of organized. And I'm wondering, I think that we're among the only universities that might have made that so reified. And if that's something that you see as a trend or something that we should be thinking about and kind of identifying and actually kind of making tangible those skills and trying to embed them across the curriculum, and any advice you might have for doing that.
I guess the short answer is yes. I think this kind of rise in skills, or quite often called graduate attributes, we can see, and particularly actually it seems to be that newer universities have been much quicker to, I don't want to necessarily call it a trend, but take this up. At St Andrews, we introduced our own graduate attributes over the past 5 years, and it sounds like it's a similar process where we've identified kind of key skills and are trying to integrate it into all areas of kind of the student experience. I think it's hard because it almost needs a culture change. It's about kind of recognizing that skills are important and that they're not taking away from discipline-specific knowledge. And I think that's sometimes where the tension is, that when we look at these skills, they're seen as separate to, quite a romanticized, and I often hold that view of university learning about going there and gaining real expertise in a subject area. And so kind of focusing on skills can almost seem a bit ugly in this romanticized version. So I think it's about a bigger conversation about what university is about, and then real kind of seeing that they can be partnered together. And, the skills that I outlined, as kind of some of the core ones, we're doing these in the curriculum anyway, so it's allowing room kind of for reflection and development rather than kind of radically changing anything, I think anyway.
Thank you. We have time for one last question, if you have one, or if anyone from our viewers online have one. If not, then thank you, Rebecca Wilson from University of St Andrews, Scotland. Thank you so much for your presentation. And thank you also for your generous offer. Anybody who wants to talk to Dr. Wilson can do it during the coffee breaks or lunch break. Thank you. And we will finish our tour around the world in Sweden. Please welcome Gere Gunnlaugsson from University of Uppsala from Sweden.
So find the position here. So, very good morning to you, dear colleagues. Great pleasure to be here. I have to start by thanking the organizers for inviting me to stand here and have a few moments with you. I'm quite new to this part of the world. I've never been to Charles University of Prague and not have much interaction, so it's quite exciting for me. I also like to thank the previous presenters for their very thought-provoking presentations. I represent Uppsala University. I'm not a Swede myself, though, not to sail under false feathers. I'm an Icelandman, which have sort of ended up working in the university now for quite a long time, previously as a teacher in business studies, but now I work full-time as what's called an educational developer. And my name is Geir. Uppsala, some of you might know a little bit about it. We are a public Swedish university. We're like Charles University. We are old, not quite as old as you, though. We're about 50,000 students. We're a full university, and we are a research university, and we're very clear on that. And I'm also obliged to say we're usually somewhere in these top 100 rankings. I have to note that formally. So we're a research university, and of course that means the classical, that research is the big career pillar for most people coming, our colleagues. However, as a public university, we do have a very extensive teaching mission. And that means we need to train our teachers. And it was mentioned here earlier that here in this country you are pushing towards changing the landscape when it comes to the views about how to approach the teaching role. I can say in Sweden and Scandinavia, we have been actually molding this landscape for quite some time now. So we have performed, we have done quite a lot of things. We had established quite a lot of formalities from the political side, from formal sides. So we do have quite a number of vehicles, ideas, thoughts which we have tested. So my idea coming here would basically, presenting some of them from the Swedish sort of point of view, show you how we have approached this idea of, you use the word colleagues and collegiality. And in the Swedish context, the term collegiality is very, very important in the academic world. It has to do with both the way that you interact within the organization, how we run it, but also in terms of how we approach the teaching role, the teaching tasks. So I'm going to touch upon that. Now, we know that the researching role is a very specific one. It has its setup in the various disciplines, like yourselves. You're formed there, you arise in these microcultures of the various disciplines, the didactics of those. We know the teacher is always found somewhere in this deceptively simple illustration, the didactic triangle, which I assume most of you will recognize, that you go into the role, you own a certain subject, your knowledge, your skills. However, moving on into higher education, we have to look at the idea of what makes it higher. Those of you coming from educational sciences will recognize this. The teacher in the schools is bound by certain rules and frameworks and ideas. Moving into higher education, this model becomes deceptively complex in that the teaching's role as the specialist, as the researcher, as the person who besits the knowledge, has to adapt towards, in terms of control, in terms of dominations, of power hierarchy, to be able to understand how do I approach, adapt content towards the student, how do I create so that the student, in a normal progression in higher education, the student takes over and owns more and more. To relinquish the power. And this is a complex process. And it's not a given one. We have so many examples of teachers who, on their own are working their way, good teachers in a way, but maybe have a problem to see how do I adapt, how do I evolve, how do I provide moments for myself to reflect and see myself in my practice, bounce against colleagues, become motivated, of course. So this is sort of a basis of what we work with our teachers, to have them see themselves in relations to others. And that means that there have to be very specific support forum moments where they can do this. So a simple yet deceptively complex model, which we can discuss quite a lot later on. It's been modeled a little bit more differently in terms of higher education. My colleagues down in the other university in Sweden, Lund University, they've set up a little model just to discuss this in more detail. And what do we mean when we talk about collegiality, motivation, and higher education competence? And in the end, what is competence? What are the skills that we're looking for? What do we need in order to hone them and build them and to grow as teachers? And you'll have to know one little detail which we have in Sweden, which maybe makes things a little bit more interesting for us, is we actually have it bound in law that our teachers have to formally hone their pedagogical skills. They can't escape, for better or for worse. So that it is bound in law, and it's bound in even in our employment statutes, that, for example, if you want to apply and gain an academic position as lecturer, professor, you have to have at least 10 weeks of qualified, documented pedagogical training in some format. So that sets sort of a pressure on things to then put it down in concrete, solid terms. What does that mean? How do we do that? It also sets a mission for us, since my unit, the Unit of Academic Teaching and Learning, we, among other things, provide these trainings very actively. I'll get back to that in a moment. But we talk about pedagogic competence, and we look into this in all these various different forums that we have to work in the trainings, in other ways. And we have the didactic triangle sort of in the middle you talk about, where the student is learning, and the practice, the hands-on thing, what you do in the classroom, the control you have. But we also have this sort of circle around it. This, if you're going to grow, become self-aware, to gain the insights, to gain the skills you need, to be able to have opportunities to observe, to have some sort of theoretical anchoring beyond your own disciplinary ones, and that's always a little bit of the twist, isn't it? And then to be able to funnel that into solid, planned choices. So a little circle there. And of course, there are sort of frame factors around that in order to observe, you have to have an idea about the perspectives. We discuss perspectives a lot in Swedish higher education. We have very specific ones. We talk about perspectives such as inclusion and teaching for inclusion, which is a constant one we return to. One of the hot ones always is perspectives about how to train and teach for sustainable development, for example, these type of things that are very formal ones. And then we also have the more sort of flighting ones. And to do that, we need to create forum for these informed pedagogic discussions in various formats. Train on, lift on these. And then we have for each discipline, of course, all the framework factors, politics, industrial requirements, external actors, and all that. All the possibilities, all the challenges that you have. And in this, we define this as, these are the teaching skills, hands-on teaching skills, the baseline. But we have all of this as pedagogical competence. And for example, applying for positions, when you're setting up the documentation to apply for professorship, you have to be able to frame all of this. We're back to the basic format of, as you recognize, a teaching portfolio, for example, where this is very explicitly anchored and important to be able to summarize and pick up and demonstrate this. This is the base model. My colleagues down in Lund, like I said, who have been tinkering with this for a long time now. There are many ways to approach this. And in Sweden right now, we have sort of moved towards talking about this in very concrete terms. We talk about an academic teacher. And we talk about academic teachership as the act, and relate to the previous speaker talking about Ernst Boyer and the ideas of scholarship of teaching and learning is very anchored in those base ideas. But it's been evolved, and we have good support in this. For example, the National Association for Teachers in Higher Education, they have engaged, encouraged, they're sort of a lobby organization and all that. They have set up frames and guidelines, frameworks and others to sort of try and define, for example, what does this mean? What does it require if you want to push towards becoming an academic teacher? And this is a collegial process. It's enormously important to remember this all the time because it requires this active interaction. It requires both management but also colleagues across the line to support each other, to be engaged and to be willing to participate, to share in this. We say there are many ways. Just going to have a small sip here. In our context, one of them is this sort of deciding on formal training, to select courses, and we have to provide a lot of these in some format. But like I said, we have this little edge with us that teachers have to, in a way. So people have to have these 10 weeks. There's actually only one formal academic teacher training which is mandatory these days in all universities, basically. And that is a training course for those of you who want to become PhD supervisors. Then you have to take a formal PhD supervisor training. So you see how they interlink the research ideas with the pedagogical ideas in that. That's mandatory, you can't get away with it. But the other courses, you have to still have 10 weeks in some way. Those from educational sciences, they might take some things as equivalents, but most of our teachers come and do our courses. We run a course which is called the Academic Teacher Training Course. It's a 5-week work equivalent. All teachers take it. It's great fun. We blend together teachers from all disciplines. They have to share, they have to discuss, and we interlink it with the idea of scholarship of teaching and learning, SOTL, as I would pronounce it, in that during that program, as a recommendation from the National Association of Teachers in Higher Education, the participants, they do a small SOTL exploratory task, a small project, so that all our teachers are in some way forced to try it out, to get aware of what is this concept. They test it, taste it a little bit. And in that, and they take that with them into their future careers and discuss, okay, what do I want to do then? How would I want to evolve that? Leadership roles, to encourage that, you understand. A teacher is, of course, always a leader in a room. That's a baseline. But to expand on that, to become aware of your leadership role, to look into how you interact as such, take these various positions. And of course, then the more SOTL-oriented conferences, and to encourage all of these in various ways. Mentorship, collegial activities, scholarship of teaching and learning as a baseline. So these are sort of things that we propose, we support, we push for, and make very, very visible to our teachers, to invite them in. Because it's important, again, linking back to this sort of collegial idea, that you have to provide forum, you have to look and support forum where you operationalize your thoughts. You don't just sit and do on your own. You need to do, to show, to discuss, to reflect, to play off your colleagues, and demonstrate this, quite hands-on. If you're interested, we have professors of higher education didactics at Stockholm University. It's a growing field as well. So Clara Bolander-Laxoff and Max Shea, and they work together with one of these associations. And they actually have a publication here about what is defining academic teachership as such, which has become, it has quite a heavy impact on how it reflects on what we do. It's a short reading, but it's quite interesting. So I have the link here in the presentation. I'm assuming you'll be getting that, to be able to pull that down. But there is a small sort of idea about what academic teachership should be. Then you have to start looking for sort of vehicles and ways. How would you prefer to do this? One way that we have done at Uppsala, which I can sort of lift as an example, as a vehicle of getting teachers together, to getting this collegiality up and running, is we have established what's called a program or a framework now for teaching and learning. And the sort of the parable or the history of this is, back in the early 2000s, Rector had a good idea. Rector set a little bit of something called the Paedagogium program and sent it out to the departments, the faculties. Here you go, there's a quality about teaching and learning. And like often is in large, complex organization, baroque ones, it was sort of largely ignored or sort of nicely received as a nice sort of suggestion to the discussion. It sort of floated away. That's a picture of my private copy because it's very hard to find. But some teachers, a couple of academic developers, and some students picked up the idea. And they said, this could be something. This could become a way to stimulate a discussion about what is quality teaching. So they started a process, and they went to Rector, and Rector said, okay, give it a try. It was a 2-year process where they went through a large sort of collegial collection of discussion, panel discussions, going out to the departments, negotiating back and forth about how do we define this, how do we frame this. And the students were very active as well. And it turned out into this sort of light blue one, teaching and learning at Uppsala University. It was set up as a sort of a T account. On one side, this is the university's responsibility. On this side, what is the student's responsibility? And it went through various ideas about what is quality, where should it be found, what should establish, and who should be responsible for what. And it was a quite impactful thing because it forced us as colleagues to discuss and try to define what this should be and negotiate with the students. Then a couple of years went, it had a bit of an impact. We had a lot of visitors from abroad and a lot of people who tried to establish similar things. It is a tough thing to negotiate. And it's supposed to be revised, of course. It's not a static document. So we went into a process. Actually, I was the project leader for that, to upgrade, and there were several things we pointed out. One of the things we noted was the first sort of real one was that, of course, not everything was related to the student. So there were a lot of blanks on that side. A lot of it was much more oriented towards university and teacher. So we broke it up into 2 parts, really. So one part is university and student. And it was quite interesting. The students were very, very interested in discussing that and setting out as student, as colleagues in a process. To student, to see student, to respect student, to a degree that we had formulations which our legal department went and said, we can't say that. Sort of tone it down a little bit. But it was a very fun way of negotiating together. So we had representatives. It was a huge process, including the whole university, to discuss this, to revise. But second version then, or third version, sorry, which was then broken up, so we had the idea university student, but also then university teacher. And then in that, to discuss and lift out how should the teacher be supported? What's expected of the teacher in delivering quality teaching, but what should the university provide in order to support that? It's just been renewed again. I was not involved in that process more than sort of fleetingly, but it's brand new since September, so it's hot off the print. And big change there was really that they decided to take the doctoral students as the PhD training programs as students as well, because as you know, they sometimes, connecting to research again, they sometimes get sort of fall in between the chairs. So they're in there now. The QR code should lead to the download site if you're interested. But this is a sort of an example of how you can get this type of forum together, to get that type of collegial motivating discussion, to pin things down. There's lots of other ways of doing it, but as an example, it is, however, like I said, it's a tough negotiation. You have to be prepared for that, given all the microcultures, all the didactic cultures that are found in universities, but it's great fun. So, tips. You saw an example which Sweden uses, you had a gold medal, which was very nice. In Sweden, there's more of a career idea. The universities are setting up sort of concepts like parallel to becoming excellent researcher, you can now become excellent teacher with a certain pay bonus and a title and all that. There are various models for this. I'm not going to say Uppsala's is the best. Unfortunately, I can't. I'd have to say differently. Uppsala has its problems. There are other universities who are better. But this is also very interesting because then you can apply for, in some universities, 2 levels. You can apply becoming a merited teacher, which is a little bit quantitative. You've done a lot. You can sort of put that into, sort of demonstrate and get this quantitative. You put in the time, but also put in the thought and put in the discussion and put in the interaction. Then you can apply for excellent teacher, but that requires much more. Then you have to become a more subtle-oriented person. You have to have leadership roles and all that. This is rolling out quite actively, so people are very interested in this and applying for this. It requires an infrastructure as well, where it's peer-reviewed, so people like myself are reviewing portfolios for people who are applying for merited and excellent teacher. But it's also an interesting way, because then each university has to set some sort of evaluation criteria, and that forces the universities to put down what is a merited teacher and merited teachership, what is excellency in teaching, and make it available. So if you want to Google around sometime for the various Swedish universities, you might look for apply for merited teacher, apply for excellence, to see how that university tries to apply and frame that type of approach. So there's a lot of options for this. If you're interested in talking more about it, because this is what we do, me and my unit, we provide this type of support and training. Among other things, the last one, pedagogic leadership training. And that's what I want to wrap up with, because this is one thing you have to realize. This is very supportive, this is very important. This is also very fragile. To get this sort of support requires management support. It requires long-term commitment. It requires hard work and dedicated time. And we also unfortunately know that this is one of the areas which is very often cut down very quickly in times of austerity, for example. So we need an awareness, and one of them is by, for example, providing dedicated training for pedagogic leaders. And it's not academic leadership. It's not, running the day by day of a department. It's being the person that supports your colleagues in becoming teachers by inviting them into programs, providing forum for them to train, do scientific research on their own teaching and learning. That type of approach. So I encourage you, when you go into this, to be aware of this, to look at your pedagogic leaders, to provide forum for your teachers, to think both as teachers, but also towards this sort of idea of me as a pedagogic leader and how I can contribute to my colleagues in that. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And once again, I wonder if you have any questions.
Good morning. My name is Gabriel Klečko. I'm from the University of West Bohemia. And thank you for the insights into what you do at your university. I'm curious if you have any data on the impact of these practices at your university. I know it's hard because you said you've been doing this for a long time, so it's harder to measure anything. But yeah. Data on the impact.
Of course, as you say, measuring this is challenging, to say the least. But we do have considerable data from various sources. We have very good data about sort of the experiences of the teachers doing our trainings, for example, the feedback about how they experience. We do follow up as well, so we have some sort of more long-term about how they felt that they have managed to implement or get support. Less than we would like, always, but still. Some of the subjects, especially within the natural sciences and technology, who have a little bit more money to fund into this, they also follow up a little bit within their own discipline about, for example, how changes in pedagogical didactic approaches, how structural changes impact on student learning, for example. But again, we have the crude measures are always, grades. And, the Swedish system has very rough grades, so it's a bit hard to see anything. Some of our disciplines just have pass-fail gradings, for example. So yes, we do have a bit. We try. It's a very good question. It's a thing we need to collectively develop further, actually, how we measure this. Because as you know, those of you who do research in higher education, didactics, pedagogics, know that these are often small scale. They are these vignettes, small case studies and all that, which we try to combine. People like Hattie who are throwing them together into meta studies. But we need, and there's a lot of potential here for more structured research in a ways. So we'll take that with us.
Maybe a question into discussion during the coffee break. Any other question? The mic is coming from behind.
Hello, Irina Smetachko, Charles University. Well, I like the collegial support idea. However, my question is related to your materials, which you showed us. I like the fact that in your framework there is not defined only the teacher's responsibilities, but also the student's responsibilities. And my question is how you work with it. Is there any formal or informal contract with students so they are they know about your expectations about their approach to the studies, or are teachers supposed to discuss these students' responsibilities across all the courses, or how does it work?
It's an excellent question. I wish we could enforce it that everybody was forced to. But Uppsala is, as all our organizations, quite complex, so a lot of power and decision is very delegated down. So this is down to the departments. And in this, it varies a lot. Some departments, I think the medical subjects, health sciences, are very good at this. They put it very clearly into their curriculum that first-year students, for example, they should be introduced to this. There should be sessions where they discuss what does it say here, what should you expect, what do you expect of us, what do we expect of you, what should you expect of each other. So that the medical science, the health sciences are very good at that. Others, like social sciences, they're a little bit more hands-off. They feel it's maybe a little bit instrumental. So there are various approaches to it, but we are pushing it. This time, actually, we also, for the first time, we include a student material, a very explicit one, with a lot of online resources, but a publication, a small booklet for students, which is handed out. And hopefully, it's because it's just new now, but hopefully as we receive the next student cohorts this spring, for example, they'll get a copy of that. So at least we have to push it. But a lot, but not as much as we'd like.
Thank you. Time for one last question over there.
Michal Červinka, currently Academy of Science. I would like to touch a little bit further in the previous question, because I had the same more or less question, but I understand that you have means of like bringing students to the table. But how do you actually engage them into the discussion when you have them at the table? And also, I think for first-year students at the university, it's mostly about trust, because you're still promising them to deliver the quality. And by the time they come to your table, they already spent at least 2/3 of their life in the education system, and they have good examples, bad examples as well. So how do you actually convince them to trust you in that discussion?
That's a tough question. It is. I have to reflect on that, really. Yeah, as you say, we know our students come into their first term with large expectations about things. You know, it's supposed to be like this, and you're the expert who knows everything and meets me respectfully, and I'm going to sit to you, listen to you lecture while you tell me how it is, and then they're sort of formed by that. Well, we have to be very active in this. I mean, we have very good student organizations. We have the bonus of that. We have both what's called the student nations, which are specific clubs which the students join, which are also very pedagogically interested. And they gather people not from the disciplines, but from the various landscapes. So it's a sort of more heterogeneous student group. And then we have the various student representatives from the specific student cores, as they call, for the disciplines. And we have a good dialogue with them. But of course, we always have that challenge. You know, these are senior students. They're almost professional students in a way. So we also have to reach out with, you know, inviting students in voluntarily, you know, small gifts, fundings to participate, broad blanket surveys, stuff like that. So they have to be a little bit all over the place. Although I don't really feel that we have a sort of, I think there is a pretty high level of trust. In a sense, my perception is that there's not this, maybe in some smaller disciplinary sort of pockets, but generally speaking, I think the students have a sort of a mutual respect for what we are doing, but that's been grown over time, of course. We're very visible. We do a lot of sort of outwork in that way. So I hear your question in a sense. I don't really see it as a sort of a large challenge, more than, as you know, if you're trying to reach all students to surveys, we get a miserable response rate, unfortunately. But that's the way the world is right now.
Maybe even one more question we can fit in our schedule, if you have one. No, you're round out of the questions. Okay, thank you so much, Georg Gunnlaugson from University of Uppsala. Who's our third host speaker. And now it's time for you to talk, but we won't force you to talk in front of everybody. We will let you go for a coffee break and talk all those important topics we had started among yourselves. Enjoy the networking that you can do here, because it's also the very important part of every conference. And we will be back in 30 minutes for panel discussion. Welcome, everyone. I hope your sugar level is high enough to concentrate for another 90 minutes of panel discussion. Let me welcome our guests. I will start from the lady sitting next to me, Gabriela Klečková, University of West Bohemia. Sorry, yes? Yeah, I'm right, sorry.
Yes, yes, correct.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
I was confused for a second, thank you. Next to her, Karolina Dušinská from Charles University, expert in higher education. Milan Černý from Masaryk University. Teacher, welcome. Last but not least, Lucie Poslušná from Charles University, representative from a teaching and learning center.
Good morning.
Hi and welcome. If you have any question during the panel discussion, please note them down or just remember them and ask them at the very end of the discussion so that we will just keep this together. Okay, let's start. At the very beginning, I would like to ask you for a personal moment. Can you share a moment when you felt really motivated and a little bit of reflection? What helped you with that? What was the source of your motivation? Anybody who has the strong memory of this moment?
Maybe if I can start.
Sure.
The first thing that springs to my mind is the beginning of the pandemic, and that was a real sharing, very intensive sharing and strong motivation to share because we had to come up with some ways of continuing teaching. So I just remember because I had been interested in digital technologies even before that. So I just remember sharing various ways of teaching, platforms that we could use with my colleagues, creating manuals, etc. So that's something that I remember very well. But if I may, just one much older memory is when I started teaching. That's the last century we're talking about. And
it's not that far, though.
I taught, my first job was to teach at a language school as a children's teacher, children's course teacher. And there were, in fact, two groups of teachers there. It was us, just teaching songs and rhymes and cutting some pictures and cards all the time. Basic things, and then there were those serious teachers who taught preparation for Cambridge certificates and high levels. And there was not too much of communication between these two groups. And to me, as a 20-something-year-old, those more senior teachers looked quite intimidating. And once I was asked to run a teacher development session for the whole school, and I thought, oh my God, what am I going to teach to these serious people? And I just chose some activities that were universal, and I just hoped that they would not think that they wasted their time. And then one of the teachers of adult courses after the workshop came to me and she just said, well, thank you very much. This was so enriching. I have not realized that I could do children's activities with adult people and it would work. And for me, this was really satisfying to see that I can share something even with people who I would not think that I could share something with. And maybe just to add, this particular teacher later became the head of the language center at the Faculty of Social Sciences, and she remembered me, and when she was looking for some new teachers, she contacted me, and that's maybe why I'm here, thanks to sharing.
Thank you. I just thought about things Rebecca Wilson said at the very beginning of the conference about how curiosity is natural for kids. And maybe if we remember the things that we did as kids, maybe we would gain again the curiosity they had. Another personal experience for motivation, or maybe, do you have one?
Maybe I will continue. I teach all of my academic career one mandatory course of our pregraduate students, and the course is at Friday. from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. In big lecture hall, I have half of students in person present and half of students is in online form. And
sounds about perfect.
Yeah, it's a ideal situation for teaching activities, and many of years was for me very difficult teach in this group, and after COVID-19 situation will be changed because students in the hall don't speak, and I'm thinking, okay, it's difficult situation, but I am teacher and I need find a specific solution, and my solution was Mentimeter. And I start using Mentimeter in this group, and I'm thinking about activities with self-reflection, sharing preconcept, sharing knowledge, and my students participate in this form of activities on the lecture. And today I have 90 students in the group, and I think in standard week I have 65 students in Mentimeter, and they are clicking all my questions, and it is one of my favorite courses. And at this moment I have a specific teaching problem, and I find specific solution with changing culture in the group, changing form of connection between me and my students and between students together. It was a very strong moment for my sharing this knowledge, and I go to the faculty and say, okay, I have Mentimeter and it is great for this and this. And I think maybe the negative form is when I teach some other courses, students speak, okay, this is your courses? Where is Mentimeter? I say I using many of forms of interaction education, but Mentimeter in this specific situation was a great solution for me, and it was a great moment of my sharing pleasure of this interaction.
The second speaker mentioned COVID, which somehow brings me to a question if the motivation connects to crisis somehow. But we will get to that later. Mrs. Dushinská, do you have any personal experience to share?
Okay. This is very personal, at the same time very down to earth. I never wanted to become a teacher. I graduated as a chemistry engineer. And since I was already pregnant during my graduation ceremony, some years after I thought, I shall find a job to combine family and some reasonable time schedule, and maybe teaching could be the place. And what was there in my mind was a sense of freedom, that from the very beginning I found the teaching profession very free. We seldomly speak about the freedom which is inherited in our work, but indeed we have a high degree of freedom, and I appreciate it from the very first moments at upper secondary school as a chemistry teacher, and then much later at university, and I really love the freedom of the job also in my educational developer work.
Thank you for sharing this really personal experience.
I also have a personal experience of a different nature that goes a year and a half back in time, when I work at a teacher education institution and I oversee students becoming to be English teachers. And last spring I went to observe a student of mine, and we were discussing what I saw in the class, and I was pointing out that maybe she should consider giving less freedom to the learners and not rely on their feelings too much, that it should be some a challenge for the learners. She was very, how are you feeling today? Okay. Yeah, and I was asking about what kind of learning was happening. Anyway, so this happened. We were discussing the lesson. She said, I don't think you're right. I think they need to be fully respected and we need to be aligned with their feelings and emotions. I'm like, okay. She's a young generation. I'm an older person. Maybe I should think about what she's saying and reflect on her input, on my thinking. So I was kind of thinking and thinking and thinking, and I sent an email saying thank you for the ideas you share. I really appreciate it. Made me think. No response. So I thought, maybe she's not reflecting on what I said. I'm the only one reflecting here. And a few weeks later, we go to a pub after a class, and we're sitting around a table, and I bring up the situation again. I said, I was really grateful. It really made me think about how I think about communication in class and setting limits and challenging learners. And she was sitting there, and her peer was sitting there, and the peer says, yeah, I think you're a boomer. And I'm like, a boomer? And I have to remind you, this was 2 days before my family celebration for my 50th, okay? So it was and I'm like, okay, so I'm a boomer. And as a right boomer, I said, what does it mean to be a boomer? And so your thinking is outdated, basically. That's what they told me. And of course, I leave the pub, not in a happy spirit, but in a very thoughtful spirit, thinking, wow, maybe I am a boomer. Maybe my understanding of teaching is outdated. Maybe my thoughts about what should happen in a language classroom are old. I'm my age. And so I started thinking and asking colleagues about the issue, how they feel about the students. And I started thinking more about what I see in my classes, how the students respond. And this puzzlement in what I see and them not doing what I would like them to be doing and having certain expectations. And of course, as many of us are in the classes, we always compare the students to who we had in the past, right? And it's like, and suddenly these are not doing what the students in the past were doing. And so that kind of was like, maybe this is a completely different group. And I'm like, okay, it's time to leave teaching. I'm too old. And I don't know what to do with these students. And we're talking graduate program, first year, second year graduate program. And so I started exploring, talking to colleagues, started looking into the literature, and realized that there is a generation Z or Z that have certain characteristics and certain expectations and certain behavior, and they're very different from any other generation. And we held a departmental meeting about it. We look at some research on the topic. We brainstorm ideas. We talk about the perception of our students, how we think they're lazy and not committed to learning, how they don't do what we would like them to be doing, and so forth, mostly having the complaints about the students that many of us have on a regular basis. And it turned out into an agreement in the department. We're going to upgrade and change some of our practices. And I don't know what my colleagues are doing currently now based on our meetings, because you have to follow through and kind of reflect. But I approach a new group of graduate students in the teacher preparation program differently this September. And it's been an amazing 6 or 7 weeks. And by changing my own attitude about and expectations of them and leaving in blank and giving room to them to excel in the class, completely changed the dynamics. So maybe it was a tough group that I had before. Maybe it was one of the groups of students that we all have that sometimes we run across and go like, oh, we're happy when we leave the classroom. And regret the next time we have to go in because the chemistry doesn't work for us. But maybe it is because my attitudes have changed due to learning more about their needs and being more open-minded. And I'm grateful for the experience. I don't think I'm fully there. I still have a lot of questions, but what I learned is that asking questions about how they learn and feel is now giving me the direction how to interact and work with them. Sorry for the long story, but I thought that maybe many of you can relate to this very experience. And being open-minded and asking questions will avoid us being called boomers.
Another crisis where the motivation is rising from. Interesting. What do you think about the crisis and motivation connection? Do we change only if we are standing in front of such a great task or some unpleasant situation?
Sometimes we do. It just forces us to do something. On the other hand, maybe to develop somehow, you need some room and just to be well. So it just depends, really.
Mr. Czerny, any thoughts?
Maybe I'm thinking about what is crisis. Crisis is some phenomenon in the time, and it's changing of students' behavior, students' values, and I think maybe crisis is very important because when we are good teachers and students love it, how we teach and so on, it is interaction with some specific students' values, culture, beliefs, and so on. And I think crisis is time and space for changing mind, changing perspective, changing values, changing approach. And I think for me is crisis maybe the most interesting thing in my teacher's thinking, because crisis is space for identified new ways. And I think we are teachers, I think we don't have an ideal solution anytime. We need some experiments and try it. And I think crisis are spaces for this experiment. And I think my teacher experience is experience of education experiments.
My perspective is much more boring, I would say. I don't think I need crisis. I think for me it's more a matter of mindset or attitude. That reminds me a discussion we had with my students yesterday morning. They are in their teaching placement. They do their first practical teaching experience. And they had, of course, discussions with their leading or mentor teachers. And some mentioned that the teacher has an attitude like, oh, the students are not as they used to be 10 years ago, 20 years ago, ages ago, whatever. So we came to a discussion that this is an ongoing discussion since the age or time of Aristoteles or whoever. It's a never-ending discussion. And one student asked me, so in what time he should expect this setting and this attitude? How long will it take during my practice till I get to the point that the students are not as they used to be? And the answer was, well, tomorrow or never. That's up to you. That's a matter of mindset.
You mentioned it's a mindset. Are we born with a mindset that leads us to motivation? Is it inner thing, or is it also the environment we are living in and we are working in that helps us to stay motivated?
Do we have answers?
I don't.
The environment is really crucial, I believe. At the same time, we are born with something. So I don't know if there are easy answers.
There are no easy answers.
Maybe someone in the audience could answer this.
We will for sure leave you for comments at the end.
That's also another never-ending discussion.
Yeah, but I think this is it's a crucial thing for universities, how to create the environment for motivation to, sure. Even though for those who are not motivated at the very beginning, maybe how we can create the environment.
I'll jump in. I think there's something that's called motivational strategies, and we can implement those. And that has to do with the environment, learning environment, and so forth. Sometimes I think we think too much about motivating students and don't give them the responsibility for their own learning. Learning is a partnership, in my opinion. And as you said, I like the faculty expectations and then the student expectations. And I think that has to come to play. That without being partners in the learning process. And of course, we are the ones responsible for creating the conditions, the environment, and the rapport with the students that encourages learning. But at the same time, there is responsibility on their part. And motivational strategies can feed into it, but being transparent from the very beginning, what are my expectations, what do you need, what I need from you, and what do you need from me, and what do we need from each other, creates a platform on which we can learn later on. Without that, I think we cannot. I tell my students, you cannot make somebody eat the food that's on the plate. What you can think about is creating food that somebody will like to eat. Okay, so it's up to us to create meals that our students would like to eat. And there's always somebody in the room who will not like peas or coriander, right?
This is interesting, especially the coriander. No, at the same time, no but. Someone from the audience learned me when you say but, then you neglect what was said before. No. That's not what I want to do. I want to add that creating conditions is important, and modeling the mindset and the attitude and being authentic at the same time, it's the base.
And how do you do it in practice?
Maybe I have 2 points. The first is when I teach some university group, I'm transparent around about my methods. And I speak, okay, now we do this and this because I have this motivation, or this is my point of view, or we can discussion about this form of evaluation of something. And I think students at the university is interesting, smart people, and I think working with transparent about my education strategy is very important. And the second point about sharing knowledge or approach, my students working at the digital portfolios in all day study process, and each students have some WordPress or Webnote or something, some Notion, and working with reflection of study, reflection of work, connection some activities from schools and from non-government sector and from practice and combination it at one place. And for me it's very important when I see the students' perspective. And students say, okay, we are a reflection, this phenomenon, or this is important for our study experience. And the second part of this is when I motivation and speak with students why they need working with portfolios. I say, okay, you have portfolios and I have portfolios too. And I am transparent what I do to school, what is my conference, what is my papers, what is my thinking process, what is my peer reviews, and what is my perspective of teaching. And for me it's very, very interesting and very important combination, this two perspectives. It's not only a task for students, it's a task for me, and I am part of this education policy, probably, and we working with public bonum together.
Mrs. Poslušná, from your perspective of representative of Teaching and Learning Center, how can we create the environment where we can stay and be motivated? What helps it and what destroys it, on the other hand?
I think that's Ray Oldenburg, in his book, The Great Good Place, defines 3 places. The first place is the home and the people you live with. The second place is the workplace. That's where you spend most of your time. And then there's the third place, and that's where you relax in public. And in this place, Everybody's equal. The main activity is conversation, communication. It is very neutral. There are no bosses. And it's basically the home away from home. And this is something, if we manage to create, then that it really helps development. And he then gives some examples of, for example, some cafes during the French Revolution or agora in ancient Greece. And we do not have agoras, but what we do have is copy machines. Just to explain, our language teacher is in 3 buildings, but most of our teachers are in Jinonice, which is the campus that has been reconstructed quite recently. Before the reconstruction, we had one big office with one central copy machine, and teachers met there and they just talked. And they shared their concerns, their successes, etc. And then we got the plans for the new offices, and we saw that instead of that one big office, we had 3 separate rooms. And we just said, no, sorry, could this be changed? We only have one copy machine, and we want to meet together. And we were lucky enough. The architects changed the plans for our floor. So in all other floors, there are 3 rooms, but on our floor, we have we have 3 rooms, but they are connected. There's just one entrance. And I think that works really well. So having the central copy machine or central coffee machine,
I was about to say
I
that.
think that helps.
I've heard about the company that prohibited coffee machines in the offices so that people meet in a common space. Any thoughts? Anything to add to how to create the space? What helps to stay motivated, or what destroys the motivation at the very beginning?
I think not recognition of who is with you in the room and who you're facing and what they've done and their value. I think that destroys motivation. If you are not appreciated and seen by the person that you interact with, you feel absent from the present and you're not motivated, right? So it can be colleagues or students, but if we do not see the value that they bring to the particular situation and interact with them with respect and recognize their needs as human beings, then we destroy motivation. And if anybody is interested in motivational strategies, Zoltán Dorny is great, and he has outlined a number of motivational strategies that we can bring into our teaching, not a workplace and how we interact with our colleagues, but our classes. So you can look up, and it's a long list of specific strategies that you can do, or specific things that you can do with students to encourage their motivation.
Can you maybe name one, your favorite, maybe one that works with Generation Z?
I should ask my students. It's that respect, that mutual respect, the partnership. When we were brainstorming at the beginning of the semester, saying, what do you need from me and what do you need from each other? And then I had time to say what I need from them to kind of work with them. One thing they said that they didn't want, they wanted a partnership in the learning process. They didn't want somebody who shares knowledge with them. They wanted guidance and expertise when requested, but they didn't want me to pour my knowledge over them. Basically, it's like I'm just a facilitator of the process and somebody with some experiences. So that's what they wanted, and I feel like the respect is one of them. The safe environment, and going back to it, making our basic needs covered. And I learned from one of my colleagues in the summer about a SCARF model of making sure that all social needs are met of the people you work with, and that applies to leading staff or members in our departments or also in the classroom. And when those are taken care of, I think we are ready to learn, and we have to feel safe to learn. So a SCARF model, another little tip for your notebooks.
I have very basic strategies like good manners. Say hello, thank you, I'm sorry.
And that's it.
That's it.
Get out of here.
I made a mistake. And maybe show positive sides, like this glass that's half full, not half empty. So.
This one is very empty.
I start with I don't know answer, but I think for me is very important thinking about, or now we are thinking about students and one teacher. And for example, in my perspective, is very important working, for example, with tandem, with other teacher and sharing the knowledge at the education process. And for me, is very important see, okay, there are some specific education situation, and my colleague working with this situation in this way, and I say, okay, it's interesting. It's a radically new perspective, and I think when we are teaching in tandem, we can working with safety and strong feedback, and I think this is for me process of developed my teaching skills, and this is a process of strong motivation. Because when I am in tandem, I must be better and better and better because my partner provide feedback to me, and he say, okay, this joke was not good, this perspective is problematic, this interaction will be maybe better. And for me, it's high motivated working with tandem teaching and grow with my colleagues.
Just a note that sounds a bit competitive to me.
Yeah, I was about to ask if it works
tandem is a competition at first place for you. Is it so?
No. I'm
sorry.
So
that sounded like that. Okay.
I'm so sorry.
No.
For me, it is a space to be better, but I think teacher is not alone. I think good teacher is not. It's not isolated point. I think good teacher is good teacher in specific environment. It is environment perspective. And I think it is not competitive for me.
Okay, neither for me. Thank you for explanation. Tandem is, for me, it's really a base for my professional motivation. And I'm really happy that I find it nurturing, like a space for trust and intellectually motivating. And also personally, it's simply a nice professional partnership.
Thank you for this thought. If you have motivation and you have
competition,
good, a lot of things to. Well, does a competition help in motivation, or does it always kills it somehow?
I don't know. I think it is a short-term effect, but I think in long-term perspective is competitive strategies at the departments very problematic in my perspective. Mm-hmm. But maybe when we are evaluate very short-term isolation aspects, okay. But I think in long-term perspective it's very problematic, maybe toxic.
Mrs. Poslušná, we've heard that a good teacher is not isolated. How do we connect them? How do we prove them that this is the right and helpful attitude?
That's a very difficult task, I must say.
I'm sorry for that. But
yeah, I don't know if this can be done from the top. It just has to happen, ideally, organically, somehow, within the department. For example, we have one department where, when we were talking about the crises, etc. So there's a group of teachers who meet after each semester, and they have what they call, and pardon my French, fuck up nights, and they just share what went wrong, and it works really well because they will find out that they are not alone, that some other colleagues might have similar problems, or they might have some solutions that they have not thought of. So getting people together is just the continuous process, trying to offer opportunities where they can meet and share, and find out that it's not maybe just their department, but that there are people from other parts of the university or faculty, and that they face similar challenges.
But we are not very good in sharing fuck-ups in Europe, are we? It's a thing that entrepreneurs often mention when you ask them what's the difference between the environment in Europe and in USA, that we tend to speak more about successes. Do you miss that? Do you think that we should maybe share more of struggles or things that we didn't make than what we did?
You need to feel safe for it. So it depends on the context very much.
Any ideas how to create safe space where it's helpful, where it's good to share also unpleasant things or things that are not very comfortable for the speaker?
I think it starts with the leader of the particular group, somebody who opens up and shares the vulnerability in their job or in their teaching, and that opens, and somebody has to do it, and then, in my opinion, that's how it starts. I always think that you as a leader, and I'm about to retire from the leadership of the department, you model what you would like other people to do. So you open up, you say, I told my colleagues about the story about being a boomer, and that opened up, and my struggles in the classes, and then they were more willing to share what they struggle with. But I also think that it's important to share good practice, and then opportunities where learning happens in our growth as educators.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with you, and I think it's necessary working with seniority group of departments, because this group is very important to develop the open or closed climate. For example, at our department we have every 2 months pedagogical meeting of our departments, and we speak about our positive or success in education, but we are working with some problematic phenomena, and we starting not fuck up, but I think we starting with definition of specific education situation, and we speak about, okay, we have this group, this form of interaction, and this is problem in this perspective, and we are finding solution or perspectives in the group. And I think it is very important, because it's not one expert with one solution, but it is a form of discussion. It's form of finding specific perspective and specific strategies, because I think good teacher is not the one ideal type. It is many of very different people with different strategies and different ethos. And I think we need working with group perspective when we can analyze good strategies in this field.
I want to add, we talk a lot about like getting together, sharing ideas. We know from research that change doesn't happen through interactions around copy machines. I think they're more theoretical. Maybe here and then there is an idea that we take on into our classes, but change or innovation of our practices happens through focused communities of practice by sharing and support in the process. And I think the foundation for a change in our practices is our availability for a change and our energy to carry out the change. That when we talk about motivation, everybody seems, I say, busy is the new I'm fine. And I think to have cognitive capacity for implementing new ideas into our regular day-to-day teaching practices, we need to get the energy from somewhere. And how do we do it? And then putting in something new requires cognitive time and focus. And we need energy for that. And I think that's something that we are short of. And the pressure and the number of things that come to us in the world we live in makes it much more difficult. We are overwhelmed by what we should be putting into our practices, how we should be doing this, and now AI and blah, 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 and now publish or perish, and all the pressure. And that is almost paralyzing. And as leaders, we need to create space for our people to have the capacity to learn and allocate time to that learning, but also give them lower teaching load if we want them to implement something new. With the teaching that we have, sometimes there is no capacity. And I think if you want to upgrade your cooking skills, okay, it's not about watching a TV show on cooking. It's about really thoughtful planning and trying new things with the support of recipes and people tasting it and learning it. So, and if we are busy, we just get outer in and live our lives, with fast food. So I just wanted to stress that I, working with teachers, I see if they are overwhelmed, there is no room for learning and change. And it's up to our leaders to create that space for their learning if we want to change in the practices at our institutions.
This is actually a great point. Do you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to agree that time is a problem, and that's if we
always been.
Yeah, and this is what we find a real challenge for our teaching and learning center, that we offer opportunities. One-off workshops, some courses, consultations, etc. And we can see that there are many teachers who say, yeah, that is great. I'd love to see that. I'd like to attend the workshop, but then they find out that they do not have time for that. And I do not have a solution. We just keep trying. One thing that we've been discussing recently with my colleagues was that we really like the idea that they have at the Faculty of Arts, they have the Humanities Week during the semester. During the semester, when teachers are prepared to allocate some time to teaching. So maybe rather than having some extra activities during examination periods or in the evenings or on Friday afternoons when not so much teaching is taking place, maybe having 1 week during the semester devoted to teaching development and learning development. It could be both for students and teachers. Maybe it would work. But we have not had time to discuss that yet in detail.
I thought the time issue was on a blacklist for this panel, wasn't it?
No, the money was.
Oh, money was on blacklist. Okay, so
time is money.
Time is money,
and it's
Well, I would like to mention one perspective. We talk of innovations and changes and almost revolutions in teaching and to do something modern. And that reminds me another discussion with students. So let's do something modern. How about using Socratic questions? Are they modern? Or which means new, or are they simply good quality questions? So Maybe the perspective is good. It's also good to turn it that our work, that in the base of our work, there is some development and evolution inherited in the base of our work, and we don't need to write new projects for innovative strategies, etc. Just to name what works well, which I know that I'm very bad in it, and lots of my colleagues are bad in simply naming and showing what works well. It may be a matter of self-esteem, I don't know. But to show what goes and to do small steps towards quality. Evolution rather than revolution for me.
I'm glad that you mentioned that time and lack of time is on a blacklist for this panel. Of course, we expected that this would be the great issue, but I really like the idea of availability to change, the making time for change. And if you don't do it, this is the very basic of my crisis question, because crisis basically makes you to put the change as a priority. But of course, we can think about it for ourselves. We can choose to make it a priority. What do you do in your day-to-day practice to be available to change? Do you have some specific time for, like, do you sit on your table and thinking about what to change in your department, or how do you approach this?
I see opportunities for change everywhere, even in this room. So, but I try to stay away from that. I try to narrow focus on what really matters. And one of the books that have shaped my understanding of how I handle my time, my teaching, everything is by Greg McCall on the essentialism. And I'm trying to look at purpose and value of everything that I do, and focus energy on what I can change, and where there is space for me to change things rather than trying to change the world, which many of us being in the teaching profession want to do. We want to live in a better world. So I'm selective in where I invest my energy into, and letting go the many things that are not good, in my opinion, or maybe good in somebody else's opinion. So I try to work with my mind and my energy to go where I think it should go, what I can control. And being at the university, there are a lot of times when our energy is wasted. We want to make a change, and by being strategic, and maybe that's another term, strategic thinking and strategic direction, being strategic in how we implement change, and really knowing where we want the change to happen or evolution happen, or where we want to bring something new, or where we want to upgrade, or where we want to react to the new changes in the surroundings around us. But being strategic about it, because we see in the Czech Republic problems, and there are problems, but there have always been problems, and there will always be problems. So being selective is what we shoot at with our energy is my piece of advice, and that's what I've been doing. So I stopped fighting. I don't know if you noticed, those who are from the Czech Republic, how often we use the word fight. Bojujeme. We fight with people, we fight with everything, with money, with the environment, we fight. And I think that's something that we need to change the discourse of this country. We work towards something, and that's why I like Scandinavia, that is more collaborative. And I don't know if you fight over there too. You fight with, oh, you do? Okay. Yeah, so my stereotype is wrong, okay. You fight too, a little bit? In subtle ways. You know what subtle ways means in Scandinavia. You don't even notice. Okay.
Okay, our other panelists, what do you do to be available for change?
I try to find time to stop and to listen rather than talk. And it means listen to people, colleagues, students, new ideas, and to think. And I also want to stay in in the state that I love my job and find it meaningful and not boring and important. So I don't know if it's an answer.
It is.
Maybe I have 4 levels of answer. The first level is each day I am working with 3 positive things of day, and many times is 3 positive things in day, things about my teaching or interaction with students or with colleagues. And I think it is very important because when I have a positive emotion from my work, I am motivated changing something. This is the first level. The second level is I like running, and I every day running about 1 hour, and it is time for me to thinking about many of things. And many times I am thinking about my education, about my students, about my supervisor process in something. And it is, for me, it is the most innovation part of day. And after the run, I go home and I'm writing some notes from the running. And the third level is I teach many of courses. At the start of semester, I identified 1 or 2 courses which I focus with my innovation perspective. Each semester, only 1 or 2 courses. Because when I innovated all, it is complicated, complex, and it's not easy for me. And I think it is very problematic with time and with other activities. And maybe the last level is institutional level. We have a reading week in the semester. At half of semester, we have a reading week, and it is week without standard teaching activities. And we have 1 week of, for example, solving specific problems in courses. And when I teach some course with some problems, I have time to go to my colleagues, to go to the courses, thinking about some innovation, working with a new presentation or a new concept, and I can fix it in the semester. And I think it is great, interesting thing. Reading week is a fundamental thing when we are speak with students about well-being aspects. When we are speak about your task and essays and so on. But I think it is great time to teachers to reflect a semester and prepare some strategies how we can innovation our teaching practice. And it is nice because you have time and you can prepare the solution, and when the solution is compatible with the students group, it is a much more satisfying process.
Yeah. Thank you. You will tell me more about that. That's exactly what I was, excuse me, talking. Yeah. No. That reading week. Because that's exactly what I was talking about, the idea of 1 week during the semester. So you will then tell me if all teachers and students really do something, or if they take it as a holiday. I'd be interested in that.
It's different, but it's 1 week at all faculty, and it is important because it is time to meeting with, for example, colleagues from other departments.
Okay, yeah. So I'll ask you about some details afterwards. What I do, I try to prioritize, just find what is important and do that first. And I try 1 change at a time, like Michal has said. It's not trying to change everything, but just focusing on 1 thing and work hard on that. And it's hard. It's difficult.
Mr. Czerny, at the beginning of the discussion, mentioned the pleasure of sharing, which is a great expression, and I even felt the feeling from you that you really experience pleasure when sharing your experience, which is great. And you also talk about communities and peer groups in education. Why do you think they are not more common in education these days, even though that even research shows that they are very effective and useful?
I think
time and money is prohibited.
I think maybe our university culture is it's not too much collaborative, but it's too much competitive. And for many of my colleagues, is my success issues in his professional identity or his self-efficacy, or I don't know why. And
because people are competitive. It's the way it is.
Yeah, but I think quality of my teaching, of my scientist work, of my students, it's a topic about around our departments. It's faculty topic. It's not my personal budget of my quality. And I think maybe the problem is when you share something, you share not ideal thing. You share some problems, you share some questions, you share some not perfect things. And I think when we reflect how we can imagine good university teachers, maybe in Czech environment, we see classical Greek mythology person as Heracles or Aristoteles. It is perfect man or woman without limits, without time limits, without energy limits, without money limits. Yeah. And I think I'm not God, and I think it is one of the biggest problem in the sharing, because I think in university perspective, for example, in my university, it's complicated how you can sharing something when you are not bigger good.
How would you fight that?
Yeah, I want to elaborate on what you just said, because I think it's also a cultural issue and an experience. Unless you've experienced proper or respectful collaboration and the value of partnership and how others can enrich your ideas in a safe environment, you don't want to go into it. Okay, and I think in our culture, because of our history, it's something that we don't know how to do well. Again, we try to position ourselves against the others. The coming together is a challenge for us, and it applies to primary school teachers. Maybe they're the best at that. Lower secondary, or university, as you said, it is very different. And once you have that experience, you realize the power of partnership as something that's key as we look ahead. But until then, we cannot convince you that coriander is good for you unless you taste it. Okay,
it's kind of inside joke. We were talking at the very beginning if there is something that we don't agree on, and the only thing we could think of was coriander and our taste in coriander. So.
Yeah. And the discussion when everyone agrees with the others are boring. So we tried to prevent it to be boring, but coriander was the only topic left, I think. Yeah.
And this is coriander teams.
Sorry I just wanted to share this moment with you so that you know what we are talking about. Sorry, continue, please.
That's it. It comes to experience. Like if you've seen the beauty of travel, you want to travel. If you've seen the beauty of collaboration, you want to collaborate. But really having a true experience, because many of us remember being on a team of 4 or 5 and us being committed, because you being here, I suspect you are the committed ones. So you probably doing most of the job on the team, okay, or covering from some others. But once you really experience a partnership and collaboration where everybody contributes to the end result, that gives you even more of it, because that elevates you, your skills, and you're learning from the others. But unless you experience it and set up over part of a team, and I happened to learn this very beauty a couple of years ago, and since then I was like, yeah, I was, you know, I learned from others, but I was more of on my own. But once I discovered the beauty, I don't want to do anything else by myself anymore. But that's, as I said, it comes through the experience.
So it sounds all it takes is one brave person who will show the others the beauty of sharing and respectful communication. But this isn't really the case, right? But because this can work in one-to-one experience, but not in a whole department. It cannot be the system thing.
Collaboration within
I mean, if you start with one person, you just need some systematic approach.
I think there is one basic complication, that we are people. And that means that we always mix professional and personal. And when it doesn't work on personal level, it doesn't work. So that's complication.
And sorry, you wanted to mention something?
I agree. We tried to steer this discussion a little bit. So Karolina said, we don't want this to be boring for you. So we tried to bring in arguments of some sort. I agree, but there are also skills on our part as human beings. And when I was in Finland visiting schools, learning about the Finnish system, I'm amazed how that is encouraged from early on. At the end of the day, you end up working with people you may not like. And learning how to work with people that you don't like is a skill. You know, your emotional intelligence, where you stand as a person, your ability to control emotions and see the values in others, that's a skill. So I agree with you, and there are people at my institution that are very challenging, and actually I spend a certain amount of money on therapy and coaching to deal with these people. But and this is true. But because the skills of collaboration, it's a skill. It's something that we develop as well for that. But I agree with you. There are certain human beings I don't want to be in the room with.
I definitely agree that it's a skill. The more supportive structures you have, the more it works. If you don't have any, then you relate on personal relationships. They either work or not. If you have structural support, you are even able to be okay with people you wouldn't choose for, because it depends what you get from the relationship.
I agree.
So everyone agrees.
Everyone agrees.
Boring again.
No, do you have any comments?
Just related to the community of practice and the culture here. I've just started one community practice at our faculty on AI in teaching, and I thought that it would be a lot of sharing when the people came, and they knew that it was supposed to be not a workshop, but a sharing session. But still, they seem to be expecting me, as somebody who created the community, that it would be me teaching them. And that's what you said, like expecting one leader and the others following. It will take time. They will learn that they have to share. But at the beginning,
they have to
share. They will have to share. Yeah.
I remembered some controversial example. That's from a social network community of teachers, and one teacher shared an example of her lesson with pictures, and there were reactions like hearts and wow, oh, this is wonderful, and how did you manage to do it? And then there were two comments like, and is this a proper level for 15 years old? I think this is more for 6-year-olds. Or, and what was the benefit? What did the students learn? And after this reaction, there was something like, oh, how you dare to criticize, there is a goodwill to share things, and you should support, and you should not do this. So, it was a very polite comment in terms of maybe you might consider the level of the way of learning, etc. But like the community didn't accept feedback, which was not with hearts, but with question marks. We need to learn.
One more skill to learn.
No.
Maybe I have a different perspective. I teach at Faculty of Arts. It is very specific students' environment. And when I speak with my students about these topics, I think now it's strong discourse hero is not in. We can speak about our limits, we can speak about our specific needs, and I think many of my students speak about limits or specific thing. For example, when they start writing theses, and they come, okay, I can working with you, and this is my limits. And I think it is great because I think and it is idea of Pope Francis. We are human, and human have limits, and limits, it's important in our identity and our authenticity. And I think in my students, I can see changing this humanistic perspective, and I think it is maybe great moment of potential to share or collaboration with somebody because when I'm a hero, I don't need other people because I'm a hero.
Any comments?
Well, there is also a question how we accept feedback and criticism, and how we are able to provide feedback and criticism.
Is it also a skill that we need to learn
Sure.
during higher education? And do you support it somehow? Do you?
I try to. I'm based in teacher education, so feedback and formative feedback is a core of learning, for sure. But we still have huge work to do, because it's also a matter of mindset.
What I think is coming here is the identity of the Czech people, of us, and our past is haunting us in many ways and is with us present, and how we navigate that and develop in that context is, and I know there are people from other parts of the world, and you have your own little cultural baggages that you carry with yourself, and but I see that many of the skills providing constructive feedback that helps learning, collaborating, seeing the positive and balancing out with some constructive feedback to move the learning forward is another skill. Respectful communication is another skill that we are often short of in academia. Our society being an academic context being highly hierarchical, where, you know, once you pass through all the big ditches to your promotion, you suddenly are up here, and now you are watching others to go through the ditches, okay, and you actually make the ditches more complicated for them. And if I give you an example, a colleague of mine was going for promotion for professorship, and I thought it was so disrespectful. He gave his presentation to the scientific board. He left the room to hear the results. They discussed. And then they took a 20-minute break, ate sandwiches and dessert. And after the break, they call him in to inform him about the results of the decision-making process. That one thing, to me, was a sign of disrespect to this human being who is there, putting their energy, their life on pedestal for others to decide on the fate of his future. And before you learn, before you tell somebody, let's have some food, because they are outside. So I think in academia we have a long way to go in respecting and supporting each other on the path to making our universities research-driven and informed and 21st century. Sorry for that input, but I really struggle with how our academic environment is not supportive. And all this, the discussion that we are having here, it can only work in contexts where the academic degrees or the status within the university is something that is a sign of maybe achievements and responsibility towards the professional community, not a sign or a tool of power. And I'm very critical of that. So thank you for listening to this little thing.
Now I'm suspicious that you are reading my notes because no, I'm kidding. This is in a small letter, so you wouldn't be able to read it. But the question was, and I will read it because it's funny how it suits to your comment. Recognition matters, but it doesn't always mean a word or formal acknowledgements. What are the small, everyday ways that people can recognize each other's teaching efforts, and why do these moments matter? So the first answer is don't eat your sandwiches because before telling them the important results, but what other things can we do to acknowledge our colleagues? Do you think of something that somebody did to you, or what do you like to, how you like to show the affection to your colleagues?
Maybe in my perspective is important thinking about safe environment, and maybe
what does it mean? Sorry to interrupt, but what does it mean, a safe environment?
Yes, it's my second point.
Oh, great.
Thank you very much to answer, because I think the most important thing in feedback is intention of provider of feedback. When I provide feedback to destroy other people, it's a form of some power, and I think it is very complicated working with this form of feedback.
Or if I provide a feedback because I have to, because somebody told me that every day I need to provide feedback.
And I think the second perspective is feedback to support other people. And I think it doesn't mean speak only about positive things, but speak about things in context of the second people. I must see the second people, my students, my colleagues, my other teachers, and see what is ability of this people in this moment, and how I can use my feedback to support, develop his skills or competence or something else. And I think this point of view, working with some humanity aspects, it's very important for me when I thinking about competence, about feedback. I think yes, competence provide high quality feedback is very important. I agree, but there is a second level, and it is level of intent. Why I provide this feedback to other people.
I think it also depends on the relationship between the people, if it's the boss and an employee, or if it's even a colleague from the same department giving feedback to another colleague. I think that here the teaching and learning centers can help, really, because we are the objective people who really want to give feedback that develops the teacher. So this is something that we offer. We offer visits to classes, which is something that not many teachers want. They do not come to us and say, "Oh, could you visit my class? Could you visit my lesson?" But maybe a little strategy that could help is first offering consultations, which is safer than just coming to the class and seeing how the teacher teaches. And through the consultation, you might maybe naturally get to the idea that, oh, perhaps visiting my class would be a good idea. So, yeah.
I think that I need 3 points. One is trust, in terms of maybe a bit different, in terms of that I value the person's opinion. And that means that I trust my students, that they are able to reflect on the teaching and learning process. I maybe trust them a little bit less if they are able to judge this will be useful for my future job. So that's the area of trust and to value the opinion. Then there is honesty, that I believe that the feedback is honest. And last but not least, it's skills. You don't want to hear comments like, you are not so smart. Even if you are not so smart in what you did, you want to hear it in a different way. And it still can stay honest.
The key thing is we don't talk about the people, we talk about the behavior, right? We talk about the activities, not the people. So you are smart, you're stupid. It's not like then I'm attacking you as a human being, right? But the activity that you just develop here, hey, that's stupid. You know that, right? That it's stupid, right?
Maybe.
Maybe.
I need to
well, she's not
consider if I honest your opinion.
Yeah.
No, this is
I
very
value your opinion.
very difficult thing to keep it on track in this every time. Okay, last 15 minutes of this panel discussion we would like to dedicate to your questions, if you have one. So once again, we will bring you a mic if you want to ask something that you heard. And I see the question in the first row here, please. And yeah, in the back, so we will get back to you.
Nice to meet you. Hello, Martin Kocorek from Charles University. You met that topic briefly on several occasions, and that's the food. Because if we want to create a safe space, I believe like existence of table with some snacks or like the boxes with pizzas change atmosphere of the meeting highly. I feel it like a biohacking, as with the food, we switch from the sympathetic answer, fart or fly, to parasympathetic, rest and digest. So I was witness of the meeting when 2 people with really significant animosity against them, after having slice of pizza, they discussed the problem really nicely. So do you know more of similar tricks, these small details which change atmosphere? Thank you.
I didn't see it coming, but it's a great question, actually. An experience with providing food in this situation.
I think you look for opportunities that people can get to know each other outside the work profession, as like they have also personal lives, right? So creating platform we do in my department of the once a year we get together and have the American Thanksgiving, but it's just a reason for us to get together and sit around the table and talk. And that's always valuable. So, you know, some departments go on a hike. Some other colleague from the geography department was just talking about going rollerblading, ice skating with the whole department. So I think the time outside the workspace creates that working environment a little more, that we need that social element, as somebody I think has already brought it, that it's, you talk about it, right? It's the home, the work, and then it's the interaction. So I think that's where things start. But thank you for bringing up food. I'm glad you didn't bring up any drinks.
Yeah, don't underestimate the human animal.
Because
we
food
have
is
basic needs.
Food is always priority, right? Okay, thank you. We have a question in the first row, and then over there, I see you. No, first was the question here, please, and then.
Hello again, Michal Červinka, Academy of Science, formerly Faculty of Social Sciences, Charles University. I have two questions. I really like the panel. I think it very well connects to the previous, where we discussed how to engage students. Now we're discussing how to engage other colleagues. I was always surprised how the system, and sometimes like even like us people, are surprised by things that we should know for many years, like size of a cohort, like entry level of students, the age is like 19, 20. So we know from statistics the size of cohort for next 20 years. Also, our students, when they enter university or enter our class, that's not the moment they enter our universe. They've been 12, 13 years in education system on different levels. So my question is like, we mostly discussed so far what I would call reactive approach. That we see and then we start to adapt, discussing with colleagues what our current students should be engaged. But why are we not investing enough time into being proactive and asking teachers who were teaching students in our class 4 years ago when they entered high school? Because the mentality of the student, well, it develops, but some traits are already there. And so it seems like we have to also learn how to share between like different level of education. So why is it that we don't do it just yet, or at least from my perspective, it's not enough? I would like to avoid time and money, but let's say capacity. Like,
no, we know it's the elephant in the room, okay. So we will see.
I'll use proxy to it, capacity.
Okay, well,
is it because we don't have capacity?
Yeah.
And also, like, second question.
Okay, let's answer the first one, and then we will get to you back. Okay.
I don't know if you wanna do that. I think sometimes having them come to you and getting to know them in the context where they are, being open to getting to know them, you can also learn about their past. So, and if a school principal asks me about a student of mine, what I'm sharing is the moment when I had the student in class, but the student is maybe a year later or 2 years later. So I think it's really important to invest into getting to know the students more than interacting with people in the past. And having activities at the beginning, and I know many institutions here in the Czech Republic do that at the beginning of the academic year, where there is interaction and getting to know each other and learning about their pasts and values and interests, and really exploring what they expect of academia, what values and expectations they bring, and what we have, as you said, what they do in Sweden. So that's my perspective, yes.
Any other thoughts, comments?
I have maybe 2 short comments. The first, in 1919, Tomáš Masaryk, thinking how changing education system in Czechoslovak Republic, because he need developed some democracy skills in people in Czechoslovakia. And after 1 year thinking about this, he say, okay, educational system is very conservative. We need 20 years to changing, and we preferred using non-formal education. And in 1919, we have first concept of developed of public libraries, and public libraries in the Czechoslovak Republic was space to individual and social develop some skills how to be good democrat. And I think it is maybe one of the part of answer, because education systems are very conservative, and each changing is long-term perspective. It's one part of answer. But I am relatively optimistic in Czech Republic, because I think the discussion about values, about competence, about goals of education systems, and I think, for example, questions or discussion about restrictive politics, about mobile phone at schools, it's interesting because we have some specific topic, we have a public discussion, and we analyze many of approach how we can working with this phenomenon. And I think maybe when we discussion about problems of education systems, we can provide maybe new philosophy of education in this perspective and help changing the system. And I think it is very complicated, but I am optimistic in this field.
Sorry. Yeah, we should invite students as well to the discussion.
Being proactive, I don't know. It came to my mind that opening universities to upper secondary students and maybe even lower secondary students, to meet them, to discuss with them, offer some activities, trying to find common language might be a way, again, down to earth. Maybe promising.
And there was this comment if the money was the problem?
There are good practice examples. They exist already.
Thank you. Also, part of the innovation in teaching is also like incorporating AI, and you mentioned that a little bit, although it was not a focus. I participated in many discussions with students as well in past 6 months, and to my surprise, they're not afraid of teachers who are like extremely pro and trying to implement it, or who are actively against and block that, but they're afraid of that maybe largest group, which are completely ignoring it. And I think this could be generalized to like how to improve your teaching skills as well, because we all have colleagues who are rather not participating in the discussion how to improve at all. Like, they don't want to share the opinion. They're not even for, they're not even against some new things to implement, but they completely try to avoid being part of discussion. And this panel should be about like how to engage and mingle and share. So is there some easy way how to like minimize the size of this particular group of our colleagues?
How important is word easy for you in this question?
I'll share something that I did in the department that wasn't very like respectful, or call it. I thought I need the colleagues to engage everybody equally. I knew who were engaging and who were not, so I made everybody teach a course or take part in a course that was designed by 3 of us, and then everybody had a cohort of students that they oversaw. So they had to do the readings and the materials that the students had to do to provide feedback. It was all guided, so they didn't end with critical mindset that university people have. There should be no problem. So I basically forced them, quote unquote, to teach a class that was about the very topic. And we are now, next week or in 2 weeks, we'll be reflecting on that experience for everybody in the department, but also the impact it had on the students. Because from the early on we shared, we are also learning with you that we don't know. And so we had a course focusing on AI literacy and integrating AI into research paper writing. But that was my way of doing it. And of course there are colleagues who say, but at least they know now. And it's up to them to choose. So I think saying you do it sometimes, you agree with me? That the order is in place if we think it through. So, yeah.
Thank you. We had a question there at the back, if it's still, yes, thanks.
Hello, my name is Jan Beseda. I'm from Center for Education Studies. I will have just a comment which connecting the food. Yeah, this is an example from Learning Planet Institute in Paris, where colleagues, because they are very busy, and don't have time to meet, so they have an idea how to connect and make peer learning and some small projects. And they use the time of lunch, because during the lunch it was possible to meet them, they feed them with some food, and during the lunches they developing some small innovative projects. So this is also the way how we can think about environment in generally, and as you're also speaking about the copy machine, coffee machine. So I think this is also important generally about this kind of environment things and about the food. Yeah, I think it's also important for us, because we will shortly go to the discussions. I think it's part of discussions. And I also like your examples about this respect, about these traditions of the committee, which is feeding the food, and who is discussing with them have no kind of food and it's behind the doors, or just or worse, you are eating and you're listening of your presentation of your speech. We need to change this kind of environment. So this is just small comments from my side.
And do you have a question? No, it was just a comment.
Yeah, because
okay, cool.
I think a good idea when we are eating food, that's maybe some inspiration where we can do it in the environment. I don't know if you have this kind of, some kind of inspiration as you with the food of sharing.
Do you feed your colleagues when you want their feedback?
Yeah, we can feed it. We can feed it. So maybe to raise discussions. But you may think this kind of opportunity space for sharing.
Okay. Once you're, sorry.
No, I was going to say,
I don't know if you have experience.
you offer the food,
well.
right? So they start eating, and then it's time for you to talk, right?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, because you know, when people, anyway, I'm just depends on your goal. Like in teaching, it depends on your goal what you want to do. If you want to have an opportunity for you to talk and for them to listen, give them food, they'll talk, munch, and listen to you. But if you want them to interact, you have to do it in a slightly different way. Just what happens when you give people, they talk, they eat and don't talk.
Once your audience start to talk about food and feeding yourself, it's time to end the panel discussion. So that's what I'm doing right now. Thank you so much for joining us, not only our audience, but of course our panelists. Thank you, Gabriela Klečková, Karolina Dušinská, Michal Černý, and Lucia Poslušná. Thank you. And now before you leave this room, I want to thank you. Let you know because I see people leaving already for lunch, so I wanted to hurry it up. The lunch is served downstairs, so we will be very happy if you accept our invitation for that. Talk there, discuss what you've just heard here. Then we have prepared those parallel workshops for you. We have 2 of them. In the middle of them there is a coffee break, so use this opportunity to see the panels that we prepared for you outside where the coffee break is. And after that, after 2 workshops, we will gather here again for some closing remarks, and then we will be very happy if you join us for after conference event that will take place as well downstairs where the lunch is, when we will meet for the very last time of today. Thank you and bon appetit. Oh. One last thing, we need to say goodbye to our online colleagues that are watching us on YouTube, because we won't be broadcasting the workshop. So this is the end of broadcasting. Thank you very much for joining us, and see you next year.